Chapter 1087. In the face of Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai's attacks, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed with a cold light. Instead, he slowly raised a hand and collided with their attacks. "Little bastard, are you scared out of your wits?" Hua Yuntao sneered when he saw that Yi Guchen did not retreat, and even faced their attacks head-on. What kind of existences were they? They were dignified false saints. Even if Yi Guchen was a natural saint and had extraordinary strength among the younger generation, he was still a false saint. In front of a false saint expert, he was still extremely weak and did not have the slightest ability to resist. "Duguwubai, get out of the way." Confuzi's expression changed, and he hurriedly shouted. If it was possible, he naturally didn't want Yi Guchen to die. "You're so silly. No wonder Xingzhu acknowledged you as her master." Wu Hongyan shook her head. She finally understood why Mu Xingzhu would rather reject her, a false saint expert, and follow Yi Guchen. Wu Hongyan finally experienced Yi Guchen's charisma. "Dean Wu, don't you think it's too early to despair?" Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent as he laughed softly. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying force spread out from his body. This force was not genuine qi, but soul power. It was so powerful that it even caused the surrounding void to distort slightly. In the next moment, Yi Guchen, Hua Yuntao, and Hua Yunhai's attacks collided. Immediately, there was an earth-shattering roar and a terrifying shockwave spread out like a wave, causing the surrounding void to tremble and ripple. In the collision, it was not Yi Guchen who was pushed back, but Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai. Yi Guchen's face was cold as he slapped Hua Yuntao with one hand. Pa! Hua Yuntao was caught off guard, and was sent flying again. He felt that his neck was about to be dislocated and his old face was almost smashed. The corner of his mouth was broken and blood was flowing out. This, not to mention Hua Yuntao, Hua Yunhai, Ouyangsu and Jiang Wu, these four false saints. Even Confuzi and Wu Hongyan were stunned. Yi Guchen had actually repelled the combined attack of Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai? And he even sent Hua Yuntao flying with a slap? Wu Hongyan's red lips parted slightly. She felt like she was in a dream. At this moment, the pressure that was faintly emitted from Yi Guchen's body made her feel a strange fear. That feeling, it was as if he was facing a real heavenly tribulation sage. How can this be? How can he have the aura of a saint? Wu Hongyan was stunned. Her delicate and charming face was stunned. "Damn it, little bastard. How can this be?" Hua Yuntao was stunned at first. He felt like he was dreaming, but then he came to his senses. His old face was filled with shame and anger. His lungs were about to explode. He, a false saint expert of the Hua family, was slapped by a junior. What's going on? This kid is strange. Hua Yuntao's face became serious. Ouyangsu and Jiang Wu were even more surprised. They could not help but stop and look at Yi Guchen. On the other side, Yi Tianqing also noticed Yi Guchen's situation. Could it be? She immediately thought of a possibility. "Duguwubai, why are you?" Wu Hongyan was still confused. "Dean Wu, I told you that I won't let anything happen to you. Leave the rest to me." Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Confuzi also rushed to Yi Guchen's side. Like Yi Tianqing, he knew Yi Guchen's true identity and vaguely guessed the reason. "Duguwubai, what kind of trick did you use?" Ouyangsu, the great elder of the Ouyang family, said coldly. Yi Guchen had killed Ouyang Fengyun and Ouyang Tianji, so he was an enemy of the Ouyang family. However, before Yi Guchen could speak, Jian Kuei, who was sitting cross-legged on the pyramid and controlling the great array of Sky Market, spoke. "Interesting. I didn't expect the primordial spirit in your body to have such combat strength." "What? Primordial spirit?" "Duguwubai has a saint primordial spirit." Jian Kuei's words shocked Hua Yuntao and the other false saints. Although a saint primordial spirit had lost its physical body, its strength was still not to be underestimated. Even a false saint would be wary of it. Haha. An illusory figure appeared behind Yi Guchen. He was dressed in green and had a handsome face. Although his expression was calm, the majesty of a saint could be vaguely seen between his brows. It was Su Qingyu's primordial spirit. "This is..." Wu Hongyan was slightly stunned. From the first time she saw Yi Guchen, she felt that this young man had hidden his strength well. However, She did not expect Yi Guqin to have a saint primordial spirit in his body. Where did he come from? Who are you? Hua Yuntao's face was extremely gloomy at this moment. The originally perfect plan had a huge change because of Su Qingyu's appearance. Hua Yuntao was not stupid. He knew that Yi Guqin's background was not that simple. An ordinary young man with no background could pass the 20th level of Mount Saint Crossing? Could he set records in the Sword Dynasty? Could he hide a saint primordial spirit? You will find out. Yi Guqin did not say clearly. He turned to Su Qingyu and said, Senior Su, I'll have to trouble you. No problem. It's just a small matter. Su Qingyu had a casual smile on his face. Although he only had a primordial spirit, with the help of the soul source crystal, Su Qingyu could unleash a huge amount of power in a short period of time. Boom. Su Qingyu raised his hand, and a terrifying soul power spread out, twisting the void in front of him slightly. Heavenly Tribulation saints comprehended the power of laws. Every move of theirs had the power to destroy heaven and earth and shatter the void. Damn it. Hua Yuntao and the other false saints' faces were extremely gloomy. Su Qingyu alone could almost suppress the four of them. Seeing this, Confuzi attacked again. He knew Yi Guqin's identity, and he also knew that this saint primordial spirit should be the youngest heavenly tribulation saint of the Su family, Su Qingyu, who had appeared in the Tianhuang Plain. In the next battle, Tianqing fought against the formation spirit of the Sky Market Formation. Su Qingyu suppressed Hua Yuntao and the other false saints by himself. Confuzi assisted from the side. Wu Hongyan, who had lost most of her combat power, swallowed an elixir and began to recuperate. Dugu Wu Bai, you're really unpredictable, Wu Hongyan said with a complicated look in her eyes. She had never thought that she would be saved by Yi Guqin one day. Now Wu Hongyan was a little glad that she had meddled in other people's business and helped Yi Guqin. On the other side of the battle, Su Qingyu was almost unstoppable. He was a saint primordial spirit, and the suppression power of the Sky Market Formation had little effect on him. With the help of the Soul Source Crystal, Su Qingyu's combat power was unparalleled. Puff! Su Qingyu reached out one hand, and the space twisted, and directly crushed the body of the Ouyang family's first elder into pieces. Then, Jiang Wu of the Jiang family was also crushed by Su Qingyu. Hua Yunhai was severely injured by Su Qingyu, and his arm was torn by the power of space. Hua Yuntao was even more miserable. His sea of consciousness was affected by the power of Su Qingyu's primordial spirit, and it was almost torn apart. Jiankui, the plan is about to fail. Can you still sit still? Hua Yuntao couldn't help but shout. Su Qingyu was a saint primordial spirit. But don't forget that the one who had taken over Jiankui's body was also an ancient saint primordial spirit of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty. Humph! I knew you were unreliable. What a bunch of trash. Jiankui sneered. Chapter 1088. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for Jiankui, Hua Yuntao, and the others. However, under such a situation, Sword Leader was still calm and composed, and he sat steadily on the fishing platform. Hua Yuntao's face darkened when he heard Jiankui call them trash, but he didn't refute. The most important thing now was to get rid of Yi Guqin, Yi Tianqing, and the others. Yi Guqin also noticed that Jiankui's state was a little strange. He didn't seem to care about Hua Yuntao and the others at all. It was as if he could deal with all of them by himself. Jiankui turned to Yi Guqin and said indifferently, "Boy, you've indeed exceeded my expectations, but unfortunately, this won't change anything. All of you will die, and this saint's primordial spirit will also be devoured by me." Jiankui sneered. "Humph, if you want to devour me, let's see if you have the ability to do so." Su Qingyu snorted, and the surrounding void shook. He was the youngest heavenly tribulation saint in the Su family, so he naturally had his own pride. Even if the primordial spirit that possessed Jiankui came from the ruined Sky Sacred Dynasty, he wasn't afraid at all. "Haha, you'll see what I'm capable of." Jiankui raised the compass in his hand again. As the compass rotated, the pyramid began to rumble and tremble. The entire pyramid slowly opened like a flower bud. As the pyramid opened, a pitch-black, chaotic, and terrifying aura spread out from within. This fluctuation. Su Qingyu's face was solemn. The fluctuation contained a demonic intent, and at the same time, it had some effect on his saint primordial spirit. What's going on? Even Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai were shocked. This wasn't part of their plan. With a loud crack, the entire pyramid opened completely. In the end, the sealed prison was finally opened. Yi Guchen looked around and saw that there were a total of 999 chains inside the pyramid. There was a figure who was sitting cross-legged inside the pyramid. The figure sitting cross-legged had an extremely long head of white hair that covered his face. He was skinny like a withered corpse, and he emitted a silent spiritual fluctuation. He seemed to be repelled by the world. There's actually a saint's corpse suppressed at the bottom of the pyramid? Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, this corpse was obviously different from the 7 saint corpses at the top of the pyramid. It looked like the 7 saint corpses were suppressing this corpse at the bottom of the pyramid. But what was the identity of this corpse that it needed 7 saints to suppress it at the same time? Haha, I'm finally about to succeed. Ancient existence of the dark world, please let your will fuse with mine. Jiankui looked up to the sky and roared. A terrifying saint primordial spirit power spread out as if it was going to resonate with the white-haired figure. Oh no, could that be? Su Qingyu seemed to have remembered something, and his eyes were unprecedentedly serious. Even if a real saint was here, Su Qingyu would never lose his composure like this. Senior Su, what's going on? Yi Guchen asked. Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai were also surprised. Obviously, this wasn't part of their and Jiankui's plan. I was wondering how the host primordial spirit could survive for so long, but now I understand, Su Qingyu said in a low voice. He had been wondering how the primordial spirit could survive for so long without any external help. Now Su Qingyu understood. Then what's going on? Yi Guchen also felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. I didn't think of it at first, but he mentioned the dark world. Su Qingyu looked very serious. What's the dark world? Yi Guchen was completely confused. The dark world is ancient history, and now it's only recorded in ancient books. It's rumored that the dark world is a different space independent of the 9 regions, and there are many terrifying and powerful foreign tribes living in it. A long time ago, the 100 tribes of all heavens had a great war with the foreign tribes of the dark world, Su Qingyu said. In fact, this was only some of the records in the Su family's library. Although Su Qingyu was a saint, he was actually very young and hadn't experienced that ancient history. The 100 tribes of all heavens, the foreign tribes of the dark world, could it be? Yi Guchen thought in his heart and suddenly remembered. When the Heavenly Eye King and the Chaotic World Demonic Ape were fighting, he also said that the Chaotic World Demonic Ape clan had betrayed all heavens and joined the foreign tribes. Could the foreign tribes that the Heavenly Eye King mentioned be the foreign tribes of the dark world? Yi Guchen suddenly understood. If that was the case, everything made sense. The destruction of the Void Sky Holy Dynasty was probably related to the foreign tribes of the dark world. And this pyramid was the place where the foreign tribes of the dark world were suppressed. The saint primordial spirit that had taken over Jiankui's body was most likely corrupted by the foreign tribe's special power, and eventually demonized. Otherwise, it wouldn't have wanted to merge with the foreign tribes of the dark world at the bottom of the pyramid. What's going on? Let's leave first. Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai both felt that something was wrong. Their figures flashed, and they wanted to leave. However, no one could break through the barrier of the great array of Sky Market. Not even a false saint could do it. Haha, none of you can leave. The sword chief let out a bone-chilling laugh. Endless waves of black chi suddenly rose from the white-haired foreign tribe's corpse at the bottom of the pyramid. As it rolled, it seemed that a huge and terrifying demonic shadow had appeared. The sword chief stood up, and his entire body directly jumped into the pitch-black air wave. I'm finally going to succeed. I knew it. I won't die. I'll never die. Jiankui laughed maniacally. However, the next moment, Jiankui spoke in a hoarse voice that was extremely harsh. I said that as long as you merge with me, you'll never die. This voice. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed. It was obvious that this voice belonged to the white-haired foreign tribes. As expected, it seems that one of the 7 saints suppressing the alien race in the dark world was disloyal. and didn't want to die just like that. In the end, the white-haired alien race took advantage of the situation and demonized him. It's also because of the white-haired foreign tribes' help that the saint's primordial spirit could be preserved for so long. Su Qingyu's doubts were completely dispelled. However, this made his eyes even more solemn. The foreign tribes of the dark world were synonymous with power, strangeness, and terror. Even Su Qingyu had never encountered a member of the dark world. Su Qingyu didn't make a move because the foreign tribes of the dark world were too strange. They were even faintly affecting his primordial spirit. I am Soul Annihilating Flame of the Soul Devourer clan. It's your honor to be devoured by me. Jiankui's dark golden hair slowly turned snowy white as he spoke. He raised his hand and took off the bronze mask on his face, revealing a cold face. His eyes were pure black, without the slightest hint of white. The saint's primordial spirit had completely merged with Soul Annihilating Flame of the Soul Devourer clan. A huge calamity was about to befall them. Chapter 1089. The barrier of the Great Array of Sky Ruins had sealed the entire Sacred Dynasty's treasure within. At that moment, no one was able to escape. At this moment, Jiankui, or rather, Han Miayan, scanned everyone with his cold black eyes. As the compass lost control, the primordial giant also disappeared. Yi Tianqing was finally free to return to Yi Guchen's side. However, the situation did not improve much. Even if Yi Tianqing and Su Qingyu joined forces, they would not be able to gain any advantage over Han Miayan. After all, Han Miayan had merged with the saint's primordial spirit. When the two merged, the energy waves emitted caused the surrounding void to faintly reveal pitch-black cracks. This showed how powerful it was. What kind of monster is this? Even Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai were stunned. They knew that Jiankui would be possessed by the ancient primordial spirit of the Void Sky Sacred Dynasty. However, they did not expect that the ancient primordial spirit had been corrupted and demonized by the soul-devouring clan. At this moment, Han Miayan's release was even more unexpected. However, the two of them looked at each other and calmed down. Their plan still had to be carried out. Thinking of this, Hua Yunhai took a step forward and said, Jiankui, no matter what state you are in now, we can't afford to fail our plan. Upon hearing Hua Yunhai's words, confused Wu Hongyan and the others all glared at him. What kind of situation was this? Even the ancient and terrifying enemy of all heavens, the alien race from the dark world, had appeared. Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai still wanted to use Han Miayan's power to deal with Yi Tianqing and the others. At this moment, even Su Qingyu frowned slightly. The alien race from the dark world was everyone's enemy. If they appeared in the South Horizon region, they would immediately be besieged. Now, not only did Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai not think of how to make up for their mistakes and deal with Han Miayan, but they wanted to continue their plan to kill Yi Tianqing and the others. This was really infuriating. Han Miayan let out a cold laugh. He looked at Hua Yunhai with his pure black eyes and reached out his hand. An incomparably terrifying soul fluctuation spread out. Yuan Devouring Explosion. A powerful soul vibration force blasted into Hua Yunhai's sea of consciousness. In the blink of an eye, Hua Yunhai's sea of consciousness exploded. His entire head exploded. Red and white matter splattered everywhere as his headless corpse fell to the ground. Dead silence. The atmosphere in the holy temple froze. The soul-extinguishing flame had instantly killed a false saint expert. Hua Yuntao's old face was completely stiff, and he felt a chill run down his spine. What are you doing? Hua Yuntao's old eyes showed fear for the first time. As a high and mighty false saint expert, this was the first time he felt so close to death. Even a false saint expert had such a weak moment. What a bunch of trash. Originally, after I obtained the position of ruler of the Sword Dynasty, I could have made you all my subordinates. However, you all are indeed a bunch of trash. You are simply unqualified to follow me. The soul-extinguishing flame said coldly as he opened his mouth. Transparent soul power was sucked into his mouth. It was the energy in Hua Yunhai's sea of consciousness. As the name suggested, the soul-devouring clan devoured souls. Their clan was very talented in the Tao of the soul and primordial spirit. The situation is not good. Su Qingyu said in a low voice. Senior, are you not confident? Yi Guchen also frowned. If I had a physical body, I would not be afraid. However, I am only in the primordial spirit state now. Although I have not met the soul-devouring clan before, I have seen them in my family's records. This foreign clan is proficient in all kinds of soul Dao. Now that I am facing the soul-devouring clan in the primordial spirit state, I am using my weakness to attack their strength. The meaning of Su Qingyu's words was very simple. The soul-devouring clan's soul Dao was just right to counter his saint primordial spirit. Haha, a saint primordial spirit is a great tonic. The soul-extinguishing flame laughed coldly. He did not attack Hua Yuntao again. After all, he could kill Hua Yuntao at any time. What the soul-extinguishing flame cared about was Su Qingyu's saint primordial spirit. If he devoured Su Qingyu's primordial spirit, his strength would skyrocket. At that time, it would be possible for him to recover his former strength. I have not fought with the Dark World's foreign clan before. I wonder if you are as terrifying as the records say? Su Qingyu smiled. Although the current battle was not in his favor, Su Qingyu was not afraid. I will attack too. Heavenly Sentiment also chose to attack. Su Qingyu nodded and did not refuse. He was not confident that he could defeat the soul-extinguishing flame alone. Then the battle began again. Su Qingyu stretched out his hand, and a powerful soul Dao fluctuation distorted the void and blasted toward Jin Kuei. Evil primordial puppet. The soul-extinguishing flame also attacked. A black soul Dao fluctuation swept out, and filled the space in front of him with cracks. Sacred Heart Sword Form, Benevolent Sword Pinnacle. Heavenly Sentiment also attacked. His strength was stronger than Confuzi and the other false saint experts. He was close to the saint realm. Even so, he did not have any advantage against the soul-extinguishing flame. On the other side, Hua Yuntao's eyes were filled with despair. He could not escape from the great array of Sky Market. Even if the soul-extinguishing flame killed Heavenly Sentiment, and the others in the end, Hua Yuntao would not be able to escape death. Judging from the soul-extinguishing flame's tone, he had no intention of letting him live. Haha. I did not expect that I would be buried here with all of you in the end. Hua Yuntao smiled bitterly. Isn't it because you were blinded by greed? If not, why would you dig your own grave? Confuzi shouted coldly. Who says that we will die until the last moment? Yi Guchen's face was solemn. Humph, you little bastard. I really admire you a little. Death is at hand, but you did not give up. Hua Yuntao smiled coldly. Yi Guchen shook his head and did not answer. In the infinite plains, Yi Guchen did not give up even when he was facing certain death. In the end, he was rescued from the jaws of death. Now Yi Guchen was the same. Rumble. At this moment, there was another change in the battle. Great God-devouring skill. The soul-extinguishing flame performed the soul-devouring clan's skill. A huge black hole appeared above his head as if it could devour everything. As soon as the black hole appeared, Su Qingyu immediately felt that his primordial spirit was unstable. Haha, my clan's great God-devouring skill targets the primordial spirit in the sea of consciousness. The soul-extinguishing flame said coldly. The great God-devouring skill was very effective against Su Qingyu's primordial spirit. On the other side, Heavenly Sentiment attacked again. A powerful sword light pierced through the void and stabbed toward the soul-extinguishing flame. The soul-extinguishing flame's other hand clenched into a fist again. A mass of black light burst out and blocked Heavenly Sentiment's move. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit was suppressed by the great God-devouring skill. His entire body became faintly illusory, like a candle in the wind. However, at this moment, Yi Guchen looked at the black hole and suddenly had an idea. Maybe there is a way to deal with the soul-extinguishing flame. Yi Guchen thought in his heart. Chapter 1090. Looking at the black hole released by the soul-extinguishing flame, Yi Guchen suddenly thought of the immemorial demon sword that had been silent in his dantian. The God Devourer. Ever since Yi Guchen obtained the God Devourer, he had never had the chance to use it, nor did he have the ability to use it. Unless he refined a clone, Yi Guchen could use the God Devourer. But now, Yi Guchen suddenly thought that if he gave the God Devourer to Yi Tianqing, He might be able to resolve the current crisis. If others knew about this idea, they would definitely think it was crazy. What kind of existence was the immemorial demon sword? It was a rare divine weapon. Looking at the 9 regions and even the wider world, there were only 108 immemorial demon swords. Even if the God Devourer was only on the Earth roll, even if it was only ranked 34th among the 72 swords on the Earth roll, but this still could not hide its rare value. If it were not for the immemorial demon sword, the matter of the Tianhuang Plains would not have spread throughout the Nantian region. It could be said that the reason why Yi Guqin's name could spread throughout the Nantian region was largely because Yi Guqin had the immemorial demon sword. And now, Yi Guqin wanted to give the immemorial demon sword to another person. This was definitely a crazy idea. Although Yi Tianqing knew Yi Guqin's identity, she did not have the intention to seize the God Devourer. But who knew if Yi Tianqing would go back on her words after obtaining the immemorial demon sword? The attraction of an immemorial demon sword was too great. Even the heavenly tribulation saints of the overlord forces would go crazy for it. Rumble. The black hole released by the soul-extinguishing flame suppressed Su Qingyu, preventing him from using his full strength. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit was being pulled into the black hole step by step. On the other side, although Yi Tianqing tried her best, she was still unable to cause any substantial damage to the soul-extinguishing flame. It's almost over. Hua Yuntao smiled sadly. When Su Qingyu was devoured, the next one would be Yi Tianqing. Then everyone else would be killed and devoured by the soul-extinguishing flame. Senior Heaven Sentiment. Yi Guqin suddenly shouted. Heavenly Sentiment turned to look at Yi Guqin. He seemed to have thought of something as his eyes flashed. In fact, Heavenly Sentiment already had this thought long ago. She wanted to borrow the primordial famed sword. But he didn't do that. This was because the famed ancient swords were simply too precious. If it was him, if he obtained the famed ancient sword, he would definitely not give it to others to use. She wouldn't even let anyone touch her. At this moment, when she heard Yi Guqin call out to her, Yi Tianqing understood. Yi Guqin was willing to temporarily hand over his primordial sword to Heavenly Love. Senior Heavenly Sentiment, I'll leave it to you. Yi Guqin began to activate the God Devourer sword in his dantian. Although he could not use the power of the God Devourer sword, it was not a problem for him to use it. As for why he didn't give it to Su Qingyu, this was because Su Qingyu was a primordial spirit, so it was difficult for him to unleash the power of the God Devourer sword. A futile struggle. Hua Yuntao saw Yi Guqin's actions and shook his head as he muttered to himself. He was already in complete despair. However, to be able to make Heavenly Sentiment and the others die with him, it could be considered as completing the mission. Yi Guqin tried his best to focus his mind on his dantian. The demon sword that had been silent all this time began to buzz and tremble when it sensed something. Out! Yi Guqin yelled and slapped his own abdomen with his palm. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed fiercely. A section of the sword hilt fell into Yi Guqin's hand. Then, under the watchful eyes of Wu Hongyan, Confuzi, Hua Yuntao, and the others at the side, the pitch-black demon sword was pulled out of Yi Guqin's body inch by inch. That visual shock caused one's heart to tremble. What is that kid trying to do again? Hua Yuntao's old eyes narrowed. It could be said that the reason why this perfect plan had changed was largely because of Yi Guqin. But now, Hua Yuntao did not think that Yi Guqin had any means to turn the situation around. After all, their opponent was the Dark World's alien race. Wu Hongyan's face was also filled with a trace of confusion. She did not know Yi Guqin's identity, so she did not know what means Yi Guqin had. As for Confuzi, his old eyes narrowed at this moment. He knew Yi Guqin's identity and seemed to understand what means Yi Guqin was going to use. As time passed, Yi Guqin finally pulled the God Devourer sword out of his body inch by inch. The God Devourer sword was pitch black and covered with demonic patterns and bright red blood grooves. The entire sword shape was savage and ferocious, and it was covered with protruding thorns. At the guard of the sword, there was an open beast's mouth, and chaotic fog was rolling in it. It was like the entrance of a black hole. As soon as the demonic sword was pulled out, the entire sacred palace seemed to be unable to withstand the vast demonic power, and immediately began to rumble and shake as if it was going to collapse completely. The aura of the demonic sword even caused the great array of sky ruins to hum and tremble. That is. Wu Hongyan and Hua Yuntao, who were in the distance, were shocked. The pitch-black demonic sword that Yi Guqin had pulled out made them feel extremely fearful, as if they were being stared at by an ancient giant beast. Is this the immemorial demonic sword? Confuzi saw this and sighed deeply. The immemorial demonic sword? What is going on? Who is Dugawu Bai? Wu Hongyan's face was filled with astonishment when she heard this. Haha, there is nothing to hide now. Dugawu Bai is Yi Guqin, who stirred up endless storms in the infinite plains, Confuzi said. What? He is Yi Guqin? Wu Hongyan's beautiful eyes widened. Even with her identity as a false saint expert, she could not help but gasp. This was really too surprising. How is that possible? That little bastard is Yi Guqin. Could that sword be? Hua Yuntao also heard Confuzi's words and his old face froze. When his gaze fell on the God-Devourer sword, there was an extremely fiery look in his eyes. The immemorial demonic sword. Is that the immemorial demonic sword? Hua Yuntao almost could not hold back and wanted to directly snatch the sword in Yi Guqin's hand. However, he knew that Confuzi would definitely stop him. Senior Yi Tianqing, take this sword. Yi Guqin held the God-Devourer sword in his hand and directly threw it to Yi Tianqing. After just holding it for a while, Yi Guqin felt a demonic intent corroding his mind. Even with Yi Guqin's temperament, it was difficult for him to resist this demonic nature. This showed how great the influence of the God-Devourer sword was. Yi Tianqing reached out to take the God-Devourer sword and glanced at the sword. It was also her first time seeing a famed immemorial sword. That hidden vast power caused even Yi Tianqing to involuntarily click her tongue in admiration. Of course, the demonic nature of the God-Devourer sword also corroded Yi Tianqing's mind. However, Yi Tianqing's strength was much stronger than Yi Guqin's. For a short time, Yi Tianqing did not have to worry about her mind being affected. That sword. Han Mieyan obviously also noticed the God-Devourer sword. To be honest, whether it was Su Qingyu or Yi Tianqing, Han Mieyan did not care about them. As a member of the Soul Devourer clan, he could restrain Su Qingyu. Yi Tianqing's strength had not reached the saint level, so she could not pose a threat to him. However, that pitch-black demonic sword made Han Mieyan feel a great threat. It could be said that the threat of Su Qingyu and Yi Tianqing combined was not as great as that sword. Chapter 1091. That sword, could it be? Han Mieyan looked serious for the first time. As a member of the Dark World's Soul Devourer clan, he had experienced many things. For example, the primordial sword, a powerful divine weapon that once terrified the Dark World's outsiders. No, how could it be? The primordial sword is a rare divine weapon in your world. How could it appear so casually? Han Mieyan couldn't believe it. Those powerful primordial swords had caused great casualties to the Dark World's outsiders. Naturally, Han Mieyan was afraid of it. He simply couldn't believe it. How could such a rare divine weapon be so coincidentally encountered by him? One must know that in the entire endless world, there were only 108 such powerful divine weapons. No matter what kind of ancient existence you are, you can't avoid the fate of going to hell. Heavenly Love held the God-Devourer sword and said coldly. Her temperament suddenly changed. The God-Devourer sword emitted billowing demonic aura, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Although Heavenly Love couldn't fully utilize the power of the God-Devourer sword, he was a false saint expert after all. With the power of the primordial demon sword, his combat power immediately soared several times. He swung the sword and the dark sword light directly destroyed the void, destroying a series of space in front of him. Strong dark airflow swept in all directions. Vaguely, one could hear the roar of the primordial Taotai. Is this the power of the primordial demon sword? Yi Guqin was shocked. Just a casual swing of the sword had caused such a huge destructive power. It was terrifying. Even Han Mieyan couldn't be as calm as before. He stretched out his hand and performed a move to collide with the dark sword light. However, in the next moment, an unexpected situation occurred. The dark sword light directly cut off one of Han Mieyan's arms. No, it shouldn't be cut off. That arm was directly swallowed by the dark sword light. Damn it! Hun Miayan's face changed. His current strength was indeed very strong. However, his body was still bound by 999 chains. Hun Miayan needed to devour more experts to completely break the seal and free his body. It was because of this that Hun Miayan needed to gain control of the Sword Dynasty. With the power of the Sword Dynasty, they could swallow up the other dynasties and harvest the experts. In the end, when the seal on his physical body was removed and his primordial spirit and physical body merged, that would be when the soul-extinguishing flame was at its strongest. At that time, ordinary tribulation saints would not be his match. Originally, Hun Miayan was confident that he could suppress and devour Su Qingyu's soul before devouring Yi Tianqing and the rest. But now he wasn't so sure. The threat that the God Devourer brought to him was too great. Is this the power of an ancient famed sword? The eyes of the sword master Wu Hongyan and Hua Yuntao widened as their hearts were filled with great astonishment. Although they knew that the primordial famed sword was extremely powerful, they still couldn't hide their shock when they saw it with their own eyes. Furthermore, one must know that at that moment, Heaven Feelings had yet to completely unleash the might of the God-devouring sword. Only the master of the God-devourer, Yi Guqin, had the ability to unleash its full power. The reason was simple. It was because the spirit of the God-devouring sword, the little fatty, had acknowledged Yi Guqin. Therefore, only Yi Guqin could fully unleash the power of the God-devouring sword. Of course, that was not now. At the very least, it would have to wait until Yi Guqin reached the Saint Realm. However, although she couldn't fully unleash the power of the God-devouring sword, Heaven Feeling's attack was still extremely powerful. No, I don't believe it. Hun Miayan activated the great God-devouring technique again. A black hole appeared and wanted to devour Su Qingyu and Heaven Feelings. Seeing this, Heaven Feelings also activated the power of the God-devouring sword. The God-devouring sword was a famed sword made from the primordial Taotai. The Taotai had always controlled the power of devouring. Unless the ancestor of the soul-devouring clan appeared, an ordinary member of the soul-devouring clan would never be able to compare with the Taotai in terms of the way of devouring, let alone resist the power of the God-devouring sword. Heaven Feelings waved the sword again. A pitch-black devouring sword radiance spread out and destroyed the black hole. Damn it, don't think that you can deal with me just because you have a famed primordial sword. Hun Miayan also sensed that the situation was not good. He immediately activated his ultimate move. 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, devouring forbidden limits. Hun Miayan's power exploded. Terrifying demonic aura rose and formed a terrifying heaven-devouring titanic beast in the void. It looked as though it could devour the ancient times. The 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth was the terrifying martial art of the soul-devouring clan. Its power was unparalleled. With one move, the entire sacred palace collapsed. Countless fragments were swallowed by the pitch-black heaven-devouring titanic beast. If not for the great array of sky ruins sealing the entire sacred palace's inheritance, this devouring wave could definitely raise the entire mountain range of the myriad demons' nest to the ground. Its power was so strong that other than the king of demonic beasts and false saint experts, even the sky palace's honorables and rank 7 demonic beasts could not escape from the heaven-devouring titanic beast's devouring mouth. Facing such an ultimate move, Su Qingyu and Heaven Feelings both looked solemn. Su Qingyu had completely absorbed the power of the Soul Source Crystal. An extremely vigorous soul wave spread out. It turned into a huge palm print and pressed down on the heaven-devouring titanic beast. Heaven Feelings took out the wine gourd from her waist and took a big gulp. She then sprinkled the wine on the God-devouring sword. Heaven Feelings' aura changed again. It was as though she had turned into a wine immortal. 70% wine and 30% sword intent. Where the sword doesn't return, I ask the heavens with my sword. Heaven Feelings' sword vibrated and strengthened the God-devouring sword. A strong sword aura spread out. The entire sacred palace's inheritance was shrouded in a shocking sword intent. It's the Sword Lord's dancing sword technique. Wu Hongyan's beautiful eyes lit up. At this moment, Heaven Feelings was like the reincarnation of an ancient sword immortal. a bucket of sake and a longsword. After drinking 800 cups of sake, she swept through the 9 heavens imperial court with her sword. It was Heaven Feelings's ultimate move, dancing sword technique. Heaven Feelings swung her sword as she drank. Every sword was strengthened by the god-devouring sword's power. They slashed at the heaven-devouring titanic beast in the void. In addition, Su Qingyu attacked with all his might. The heaven-devouring titanic beast crumbled quickly. At the same time, Han Miayan's body was also pushed back. Bloody wounds started to appear on his body. Damn it, this body is too weak. Han Miayan cursed silently. Jian Kuei's body was too weak. It couldn't withstand the power of Han Miayan and the primordial spirit. If it was his original body, Han Miayan wouldn't be in such a sorry state. Since you've been sealed for a long time, it's time to be free. Heaven Feelings didn't delay. At this moment, his eyes were filled with demonic intent. Even with Heaven Feelings's temperament, she couldn't use the god-devouring sword for long. Damn it, I can't accept this. Han Miayan roared and attacked again. His body started to crumble again. Heaven Feelings used dancing sword technique again. Riding the sword and riding the wind, eradicating evil between heaven and earth. With wine I'm happy. Without wine I'm crazy. Heaven Feelings recited poems and danced. The smell of wine spread and sword intent soared. He swept his sword towards Han Miayan. His eyes were filled with determination. This sword will end your life. Chapter 1092. The dancing swordsmanship was Heavenly Sentiment's trump card, and it was extremely powerful. With the God-Devourer sword support, the power of the sword was almost at the level of a Heavenly Tribulation Saint's attack. Moreover, Su Qingyu was assisting him from the side. There was no need to doubt his strength. The two of them attacked simultaneously, combining their moves. The terrifying fluctuations caused the space in front of them to shatter, revealing numerous pitch-black spatial cracks. 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth. World-destroying limit. Soul-extinguishing flame used his ultimate move again. A terrifying black tide floated in the void, washing the world as if it wanted to devour everything in the world. If soul-extinguishing flame was in his full state, he could easily destroy a dynasty with this move. But now, with the strength of Jian Kuei's body, he could only use 10% or 20% of the move's power at most. Moreover, at the same time he used this move, Jian Kuei's body crumbled once again, almost like a cracked porcelain, fragmenting into pieces. Rumble. Su Qingyu and Heavenly Sentiment's consecutive moves collided with soul-extinguishing flame's move. An unprecedented terrifying shock wave burst out. With the point of collision as the center, space began to collapse, revealing the pitch-black spatial turbulence within. Cracks spread out in all directions. The entire land of the sacred dynasty began to shatter, and huge cracks spread like a spider web. Is this a battle between saints? Yi Guqian, who was under the protection of the Master of Swords, was not affected much. A battle between saint-level experts could indeed easily destroy the heavens and earth. Yi Guqian was looking forward to it. One day, he would also transcend mortality and become a heavenly tribulation saint. Vast waves of air rippled in all directions, and as the waves dissipated, soul-extinguishing flame state came into view. His body was completely shattered, and he could not use it anymore, and his aura began to decline. Soul-extinguishing flame's failure was due to 2 reasons. The first was that his body limited soul-extinguishing flame's strength. This was secondary because soul-extinguishing flame's soul attack was very powerful, and he had merged with the saint's primordial spirit. Even if his body was not strong enough, soul-extinguishing flame was confident that he could deal with Su Qingyu and Heavenly Sentiment. The most important reason was naturally the God-Devourer sword. The primordial demon sword's power was too strong, and with the devouring power it contained, it completely restrained the Soul Devourer clan's devouring power. That was why soul-extinguishing flame was in such a sorry state. How hateful. If I did not have this ancient famed sword, I would have definitely swallowed all of you. Han Miayan's tone contained an extreme unwillingness. Fresh blood flowed out from his pair of pure black eyes. It's over. Yi Tianqing wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He had also suffered injuries. Sentiment, heavenly sentiment, heavenly sentiment, flames level, heavenly sentiments, heavenly sentiment, heavenly sentiment. But fortunately, the soul-extinguishing flame had already been completely forced to a dead end, and he didn't have the strength to turn the situation around. If I sentiment, 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 flame, heavenly extinguishing clan, extinguishing sentiment, flame, sentiment, heavenly sentiments, extinguishing flame, extinguishing heavenly sentiment, soul extinguishing levels, extinguishing flames, extinguishing flames, soul extinguishing flame, extinguishing flame. However, even if I die, I want all of you to die with me. Soul extinguishing flame took out the compass again, and seemed to be activating something. Then the entire great array of heavenly sentiment began to rumble and tremble, as though it was going to destroy the sacred dynasty's treasure. Heavenly sentiment's eyes flashed. The god devourer sword in her hand vibrated, and she swung it at soul extinguishing flame. With a puff, Jiankui's physical body exploded, and soul extinguishing flame was completely destroyed. Hearing soul extinguishing flame's last words, Yi Guchen frowned. Return to our clan? Does this mean that the Dark World's tribe will come to the 9 regions again? Yi Guchen muttered. However, this matter involved too many things, and Yi Guchen was not in a position to worry about it. Oh no, soul extinguishing flame has activated the great array of heavenly sentiment, and this place will be completely destroyed soon. Confuzi's face darkened. Heavenly sentiment did not say anything, as she still had one more thing to deal with. Her gaze turned to Hua Yuntao, who was on the other side. Hua Yuntao's face was frighteningly pale at this moment. He originally thought that heavenly sentiment and the others would be killed by soul-extinguishing flame. Although he might die in the end, at least there would be a group of people who would die with him. Now, it seemed that although the great array of heavenly sentiment had been activated, heavenly sentiment and the others still had a chance to escape. However, Hua Yuntao would definitely die. Deputy Alliance Master, please spare my life. I will definitely persuade the entire Hua family to submit to the Sword Dynasty and work for the Sword Alliance wholeheartedly. Hua Yuntao begged. Everyone was afraid of death, and even a false sage was no exception. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? When have I ever forced the Hua family? Heavenly Sentiment's expression was cold. What did his forgiveness get in return? In return, the Hua family became more arrogant and unscrupulous. In return, they set up a plot against him to kill him. Hua Yuntao's mouth was full of bitterness, and he was extremely regretful in his heart. However, what he regretted was not betraying the Sword Alliance, but that he should not have come personally this time. Looking at Heavenly Sentiment's cold gaze, Hua Yuntao's face darkened, and he began to threaten. Deputy Alliance Master, if you spare my life, perhaps there is still room for reconciliation between the false sage families and the rogue cultivators. If you kill this old man, then you and the 5 great clans will be irreconcilable enemies. When the time comes, the Sword Alliance will be divided, and there will be internal and external troubles. The entire dynasty may be destroyed. Seeing that begging for mercy was useless, Hua Yuntao could only start to threaten. What he said was not a lie. If the 6 false sages of the aristocratic families all died here, the 5 false sage families would definitely set off a huge civil war. If other dynasties joined in, it would definitely be a devastating blow to the Sword Dynasty. You don't have to worry about that. Seeing that Hua Yuntao did not have the slightest bit of sincere repentance, Heavenly Sentiment naturally could no longer be soft-hearted. He activated the God Devourer sword, and the blade swept across. I only hate that I didn't kill you at Mount Saint Crossing, you little bastard. At the end of his life, Hua Yuntao glared at Yi Guchen with his blood-red eyes. His gaze was as if he wanted to drink his blood and eat his flesh. It could be said that Yi Guchen had single-handedly ruined the perfect plan to kill Chu Yang. However, no matter how much he cursed, it was useless. In the end, Hua Yuntao's physical body was destroyed by the God Devourer sword, and his body exploded. At this point, the 6 false sages of the aristocratic families who came to the sacred dynasty's inheritance had all died. Yi Guchen, I'll return this sword to you. After everything was settled, Heavenly Sentiment directly returned the God-Devourer sword to Yi Guchen without the slightest hesitation. Yi Guchen saw this and nodded slightly. After experiencing the great power of the primordial sword, she was still unmoved and returned it to him without hesitation. Heavenly Sentiment was indeed admirable. Next, the great formation of Sky Market will destroy this area. Let's collect the Saint Dao fruits first, said Heavenly Sentiment. In the next moment, Yi Guchen and the rest found the saint corpses. There were 7 saint corpses. Huang Qianqiu and Yi Guchen had each searched one of them. There were 5 left. After searching for a while, Heavenly Sentiment and the rest found 4 Saint Dao fruits. There was only 1 saint corpse that did not have a Saint Dao fruit. This was already considered extremely lucky. Chapter 1093. Senior Heavenly Sentiment. I wonder if you can give me the soul source crystal in the saint's corpse? Yi Guchen asked. Of course. Heavenly Sentiment nodded slightly. 4 Saint Dao fruits were already a great harvest for the Sword Dynasty. Although the soul source crystal was precious, it was nothing compared to the Saint Dao fruit. Heavenly Sentiment did not forget that Yi Guchen's contribution in resolving the deadlock this time could not go unnoticed. Subsequently, Yi Guchen also got his wish and obtained 5 soul source crystals. At this time, Su Qingyu had already returned to Yi Guchen. He transmitted his voice to Yi Guchen's mind. Yi Guchen, you can explore Han Miayan's corpse to see if there are any soul source crystals. Yi Guchen was surprised. Han Miayan was from the Soul Devourer clan of the Dark World. Could there be soul source crystals in the Soul Devourer clan's body? Thinking of this, Yi Guchen also rushed to the bottom of the pyramid. Seeing Yi Guchen's action, Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Heavenly Sentiment all looked over. They did not explore Han Miayan's body. Because the Soul Devourer clan was different from humans, it was almost impossible for them to leave a Saint Dao fruit in their body. Even if they happened to leave a Saint Dao fruit, their laws would repel that of humans and could not be refined. Therefore, Heavenly Sentiment did not plan to explore Han Miayan's body at all. Although Han Miayan's physical body was bound by 999 chains, his head was still exposed. All Yi Guchen needed was the crystallization of the soul source. He bombarded Han Miayan's head with his palm, but there was a crisp sound of metal clashing. Isn't this too hard? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. The Soul Devourer clan was proficient in the Soul Dao, but their body was also so hard, which was beyond Yi Guchen's expectations. The bodies of the Dark World's alien races are generally stronger than humans. The body of the Soul Devouring clan is actually considered weak among the alien races in the Dark World. That's why they are so hard to kill. Su Qingyu explained through voice transmission. I see. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. The environment of the Dark World might be different from the 9 regions. Therefore, the bodies of the creatures of other races in the Dark World were generally stronger than that of humans. Let me do it. Heavenly Sentiment smiled faintly. She took out her silver-white sword and slashed at Han Miayan's body. Only then did soul-extinguishing flames head split open. Yi Guchen immediately discovered a pitch-black crystal among them. Is this the soul-devouring clan's soul origin crystal? Yi Guchen picked up the pitch-black crystal and felt a cold, negative, dark and powerful aura coming from it. This was completely different from the saint's soul source crystal he had obtained earlier. Of course, the ripples of this pitch-black crystal were much stronger than the soul origin crystal of a saint. Yi Guchen stored the soul source crystal of the soul-extinguishing flames into his essence ring. Now was not the time to study it. Before Han Miayan died, he had completely activated the great array of sky ruins. Right now, the ground of the sacred dynasty's treasure was collapsing. It would not be long before this space was completely destroyed. Heavenly Sentiment and the others also began to attack the barrier of the great array of sky ruins. However, it was difficult to break it open in a short time. This is going to be troublesome. Heavenly Sentiment frowned. If the great array of sky ruins destroyed this space, it would be difficult to predict whether everyone, including Yi Guchen and Heavenly Sentiment, would be alive or dead. The great array of sky ruins. Yi Guchen frowned and pondered. At this moment, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had thought of something. With a flip of his hand, he took out a key-like object from his essence ring. It was the object he had found in the great tomb under the ancient chaos wasteland from the corpse of the false saint. At that time, everyone's attention was on the incomplete map, while Yi Guqin kept the key object. Yi Guqin had never figured out the function of this key object. Now he had some idea of its function. His figure flashed and he found the compass. No. Yi Guqin, what are you doing? Wu Hongyan looked at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin picked up the compass and turned it over to take a look. Sure enough, there was a small keyhole at the back of the compass. I can give it a try. Yi Guqin inserted the key object into the hole at the back of the compass. Suddenly, the entire compass lit up with many formation runes again, as complicated as the orbit of the stars. Runes emerged one after another. As the compass revolved, the great array of sky ruins, which was on the verge of destruction, gradually quieted down. The entire sacred dynasty's treasure also stopped shaking. Yi Guqin, you are really surprising. Heavenly Sentiment could not help but shake her head and smile faintly as she sighed. Such a dangerous situation was easily resolved by Yi Guqin. Haha, Yi Guqin, you are really a treasure boy, but you hid it from me for so long. You are really evil. Now that the crisis was resolved, Wu Hongyan also breathed a sigh of relief and teased. Haha, of course. Yi Guqin is a disciple of my sacred cliff college. Confuzi was quite proud. By the way, Senior Heavenly Sentiment, I still have a Saint Dao fruit here, but I have other uses for it, Yi Guqin said. He had already obtained a Saint Dao fruit before. But this Saint Dao fruit was naturally reserved for Leng Qianhen. Confuzi and Wu Hongyan's expressions froze when they heard this. It was not that they did not want Yi Guqin to have a Saint Dao fruit. It was just that the Saint Dao fruit was useless to Yi Guqin now, but it could allow the Sword Dynasty to have another tribulation saint. Yes, no problem. You are the biggest contributor. Heavenly Sentiment said with a faint smile. Seeing that Heavenly Sentiment did not object, Confuzi and Wu Hongyan did not say anything. But they actually wanted the Sword Dynasty to have another powerhouse. Yi Guqin nodded faintly. He believed that with Leng Qianhen's temperament, if he gave the Saint Dao fruit to him, he would not hesitate. Leng Qianhen would definitely not ignore such a favor. Perhaps he would even help the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin actually knew this in his heart, although the current crisis seemed to have been resolved. But the greater crisis was yet to come. 6 false saints of the aristocratic families had fallen at the same time. One could imagine what kind of shock this news would cause if it spread back to the Sword Dynasty. The 5 false saint aristocratic families would probably go to war with the rogue cultivators. When that time came, the Sword Dynasty would definitely be in chaos. The only way to solve the chaos was to have a heavenly tribulation saint. And with Leng Qianhen's aptitude, it was possible for him to break through and become a heavenly tribulation saint with the help of the Saint Dao fruit. This was Yi Guqin's real idea. Of course, Confuzi and Wu Hongyan did not know that Yi Guqin had such thoughts. In their opinion, with Leng Qianhen's stubborn and unsociable personality, it was almost impossible for the Sword Dynasty to recruit him. Well, this matter is over. We can go out now. But Hongyan, I hope you won't reveal Yi Guqin's identity. Heavenly Sentiment said. Of course. Am I that kind of blabbermouth? Wu Hongyan charmingly rolled her eyes at Heavenly Sentiment. She naturally also knew that if Yi Guqin's identity was exposed, it would attract the attention of the Heavenly God Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, Dongfang family, and other overlords. The current Sword Dynasty absolutely could not withstand the threat of the overlords. Chapter 1094. In the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, the flames of war were temporarily extinguished. The rulers of the Thousand Demon Nest, the 10 Demon Kings, were also shocked by the sudden appearance of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. As such, the King of Demonic Beasts and the False Saint Expert temporarily stopped their attacks and stood at 2 sides. The Martial Highnesses and the 7th-ranked beasts stopped their slaughter and waited for the battle to begin. There were also the geniuses of the 4 dynasties who escaped or were teleported out. All of them looked at the Sacred Dynasty's treasure with lingering fear. This trip to the Sacred Dynasty's treasure could be said to be very dangerous. Countless geniuses of the 4 dynasties had died. Only Huang Qianqiu did not have any fear on his face. He stood on the back of the purple-winged bat dragon, frowning with an indifferent expression. Huang Qianqiu was very unhappy that he could not capture Yi Guqin and obtain his secrets. He also thought that Yi Guqin would not be able to escape from Jian Kuei's evil hands, but he still had a glimmer of hope. On the other side, Mu Xingzu and the others were extremely worried. In addition, Shangguan Jingshan, Yin Zhu, and the other geniuses of the aristocratic families were looking forward to it. They vaguely knew the plan of this trip to the sacred dynasty's treasure. If there were no accidents, Yi Tianqing, Jian Fuzi, and the others would all die here. After that, the entire Sword dynasty would fall into the hands of the 5 false saint aristocratic families. Humph, de Guobai, so what if you are talented? In the end, you will still die. Yin Zhu and the others looked pleased. On the other side, Jian Shirsen also stood in the aristocratic family's camp. He also hoped that the aristocratic family's plan would succeed, because this was the only way he could completely obtain his freedom and live a peaceful life with her. I will definitely give you a worry-free future, even if it means that my hands will be stained with the blood of innocence. Jian Shirsen murmured in his heart. Then, in this suffocating weight, the barrier that enveloped the sacred dynasty's treasure began to crack, and then with a bang, it shattered into light spots that filled the sky. Among the light spots, the figures of 4 people were revealed. They were Heavenly Love, Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Yi Guqin. As the 4 figures appeared, all the experts and demonic beast kings in the entire 1,000 Demon Nest mountain range turned their attention towards them. When they saw that only the 4 of them had appeared, everyone in the aristocratic family's camp, from the supremacies to the sword sons and heaven's prides of the aristocratic families, had a drastic change in expression. How is this possible? Where is the patriarch? Shangguan Jingshan's pupils shrank. This was the first time he had been so flustered. Shangguan Bo, the patriarch of the Shangguan family, had also participated in this plan. However, he did not see Shangguan Bo's figure at that moment. Where is my Yin family's first elder? Yin Zhu's expression froze. The first elder of the Yin family, Yin Lingshan, had also perished in the sacred dynasty's treasure. The supremacies of the aristocratic families were all shocked, unable to accept this reality. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't understand how this perfect plan could end up like this. What's going on? Why are there only a few of them left in the Sword dynasty? The false saint experts of the other 3 dynasties did not know the plan of Hua Yuntao and the others. However, they could vaguely guess the cause and effect. Previously, Hua Yuntao and the others had disappeared. It was very likely that they had been teleported to the sacred dynasty's treasure. However, now that the barrier had been lifted, only Heavenly Love and the others could be seen. Hua Yuntao and the other false saints of the aristocratic families were nowhere to be seen. The false saints of the other 3 dynasties were not fools. They had already guessed some things. Heavenly Love scanned the surroundings and immediately said, "The trip to the sacred dynasty's treasure is over. All members of the Sword dynasty, leave the 1,000 Demon Nest." After hearing this, the members of the Sword dynasty's itinerant cultivators all smiled in relief. Mu Xingzu and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that Yi Guqin was fine. On the other hand, the members of the aristocratic families were all ashen. Some of the supremacies of the aristocratic families secretly sent messages back to their families about what had happened here. This time, the plan of the 5 false saint aristocratic families could be said to be a complete failure. The false saints of the other 3 dynasties looked at Heavenly Love and wanted to ask if he had obtained the fruit of the saint path. However, the deterrence that Heavenly Love gave them was too strong. The false saints of the other 3 dynasties did not dare to act rashly. After thinking about it, they could only flash and enter the sacred dynasty's treasure to find out what had happened. On the other side, the 10 monster kings also turned and entered the sacred dynasty's treasure. Heavenly Love and the others began to fly into the distance. However, at this moment, a purple-winged bat dragon soared into the sky with Huang Qianqiu on its back, blocking Heavenly Love and the others' path. Huang Qianqiu of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion, what are you doing? Heavenly Love's tone was indifferent. The others might not have known the identity of the top genius of the sword ranking at first. However, how could they hide it from Heavenly Love? It was just that Heavenly Love did not expose him. I just want to take him away. Huang Qianqiu pointed at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen frowned, his eyes flashing with coldness. Not only had Huang Qianqiu broken his spiritual abode, but he had also pestered him time and time again, wanting to snatch the ultimate sword domain and the ancient god's inheritance from him. This had already caused Yi Guchen to be filled with murderous intent. I am the deputy lord of the Sword Dynasty. Dugu Wubai is a genius of the Sword Dynasty. How dare you say such words to me? Heavenly Love's tone was indifferent. Lord Heavenly Love, he is but a mere Dugu Wubai. If you hand him over to me, you will gain the friendship of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. Your Sword Dynasty is currently facing internal and external troubles. If you have the help of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion, you will be as stable as a mountain. Facing a powerful false saint expert, Huang Qianqiu stood with his hands behind his back and spoke with assurance. He had the bearing of an emperor. One could not help but admire him. Huang Qianqiu was indeed worthy of being one of the 4 emperors. Get out of my way. You are not qualified to talk to me as an equal. If not for the fact that you are a genius of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion, I would have already killed you. Heavenly Love's tone was indifferent, but it was extremely domineering. He waved one hand, and a terrifying wave of air blasted out, sending Huang Qianqiu and the purple-winged bat dragon flying. Huang Qianqiu's face immediately turned cold and ugly. With his noble status and background of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion, even some false saint experts of the top dynasties would be polite to him and not put on airs. However, Heavenly Love did not take him seriously at all. Good, very good. Without the help of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion, let's see how your sword dynasty will survive in the future. And Dugu Wubai, one day, I will take all your secrets from you. You better pray that someone will always protect you. Huang Qianqiu's tone was cold. He was ambitious and did not want to be just one of the 4 emperors. He wanted to defeat Di Haotian. Yi Guchen's ultimate sword domain and other secrets could greatly increase Huang Qianqiu's strength. This was also the reason why he was so obsessed with Yi Guchen. Huang Qianqiu, even if you don't come looking for me in the future, I will come looking for you. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows, his eyes cold. I, Dugu Wubai, will repay the debt of destroying my divine dwelling 100-fold. Chapter 1095. Heh, hearing Yi Guchen's words, Huang Qianqiu chuckled. He did not take it seriously. Huang Qianqiu was not afraid of Yi Guchen even when he was at his peak. He could even suppress him. Not to mention Yi Guchen, who had his spiritual dwelling destroyed and was now a cripple. As for rebuilding his spiritual dwelling, it was not something that anyone could do. Huang Qianqiu did not think that Yi Guchen had the ability to rebuild his spiritual dwelling. If you have the chance to participate in the battlefield of prodigies, I, Huang Qianqiu, will be waiting for you there. With that, Huang Qianqiu stomped his foot. The purple-winged bat dragon roared, flapped its wings, and soared into the sky, flying into the distance. Huang Qianqiu knew that there was no point in staying here. With Yi Tianqing's protection, he could not catch Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen could not stay in the Sword Dynasty forever and be protected forever. Therefore, Huang Qianqiu had a chance. Moreover, after the Sword Dynasty, there would probably be a great turmoil. In the end, if the Sword Dynasty fell apart, Yi Guchen would naturally lose his protection. By then, it would be easy for Huang Qianqiu to catch Yi Guchen. After Huang Qianqiu left, Yi Tianqing and the others brought Yi Guchen and the geniuses of the rogue cultivators away from the 10,000 beast nest at their fastest speed. As for the honorables and prodigies of the aristocratic families, they did not follow. Yi Tianqing did not care about them for the time being, because Qin Fuzi and Wu Hongyan were severely injured, and so was Yi Tianqing. If the experts of the other 3 dynasties found out that the Saint Dao fruits in the sacred dynasty's treasure had been taken, they would definitely be furious. Therefore, Yi Tianqing chose to leave with the people of the Sword Dynasty as quickly as possible. As expected, not long after Yi Tianqing and the rest left the Thousand Demon Nest, The false saint experts of the three dynasties all let out a roar of unwillingness. They did not get a single Saint Dao fruit on this trip. Although there were other opportunities left in the sacred dynasty's treasure. But compared to the sage Dao fruit, it was nothing. I can foresee the impending chaos in the Sword Dynasty. This time, Hua Yuntao and the others have all fallen in the Sword Dynasty's treasure trove. I'm afraid it won't be long before the entire Sword Dynasty falls into chaos. That's right. So what if the Sword Dynasty obtain the Saint Dao fruit? They still can't avoid falling apart. Some of the false saints from the three dynasties said with sullen faces. In addition, the divine Condor and Blackie did not leave with Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen told them to stay in the myriad demon's nest for the time being. When the time was right, he would take them away. On the horizon, a ship was traveling through the void. On the ship, many of the Sword Dynasty's loose cultivators were sitting cross-legged and recuperating. In this expedition to the sacred dynasty's hidden treasure, from the false saints and honorables to the ordinary heaven's prides, there were many casualties. Master, you're so worried about Xingzhu. Mu Xingzhu stuck close to Yi Guchen like a swallow returning to its nest. Xuanlian Ling Mayin, Ling Emoshu, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, Kempo Jian Jinghong, and the others also surrounded Yi Guchen. I'm fine. Looking at these familiar friends, Yi Guchen smiled faintly. This time, it's all thanks to our young friend Dugu that we were able to unravel the aristocratic family's scheme. Yi Tianqing walked over with a smile. Greetings, Vice Leader. Kenpo and the others cupped their hands and bowed. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel shocked. Hua Yuntao and the others' scheme must have targeted Yi Tianqing. What ability did Yi Guchen have to be able to unravel Hua Yuntao's scheme? Xuanlian Ling Mayin and the others were all surprised. Only Kempo knew Yi Guchen's identity, and knew that he might have the ability to help Yi Tianqing. Dugu Bai your cultivation. Yi Tianqing frowned slightly. Previously, Yi Tianqing had been in danger, so she didn't deliberately check Yi Guchen's aura. At this moment, she swept her gaze across and found that Yi Guchen's condition was a little strange. I once broke through to the divine dwelling stage in the sacred dynasty's hidden treasure, but my divine dwelling was later destroyed by Huang Qianqiu. Yi Guchen said casually. From his tone, it sounded as if the destruction of his divine dwelling wasn't a big deal. Master. Mu Xingzhu and the others clenched their fists. So it's him. Yi Tianqing frowned slightly. To a certain extent, Yi Guchen had saved Yi Tianqing's life, so Yi Tianqing naturally wouldn't ignore Yi Guchen's matter. You don't have to worry about this, Alliance Master Yi Tianqing. I'll deal with Huang Qianqiu's matter myself, Yi Guchen said calmly. I believe that Brother Dugu has the ability to rebuild his divine dwelling, Ling Emoshu said firmly. When his divine dwelling was destroyed and he was dispirited, it was Yi Guchen who pulled him out of the abyss. How could a person who could restore others' confidence and rebuild their divine dwelling be unable to rebuild his own divine dwelling? Therefore Ling Emoshu had the most confidence in Yi Guchen. However, the others still had worried looks in their eyes. This was because rebuilding a divine dwelling wasn't as simple as it seemed. Most people would only become a cripple after their divine dwelling was destroyed. There might not even be 1 in 10,000 people who could bring them back from the brink of death. Don't worry, Dugu Bai. You're the biggest contributor in this expedition to the sacred dynasty's hidden treasure, and the only one who obtained a fruit of the sacred path. Whether your divine dwelling is destroyed or not, the rules of the Battle of the Sword Sun will not change, Yi Tianqing said. As soon as he said that, Saber 9 and the rest were stunned. It seemed that no matter how strong Yi Guchen was, the Jiankui position was inevitable. Alliance Master Yi Tianqing, I only need the Sword Sun position, Yi Guchen said. He just wanted to use the identity of the Sword Sun to participate in the Battle of the Elites. As for the Jiankui position, he really didn't care. Dugu Bai, you don't have to refuse. You'll be where you belong. You won't be demoted just because your divine dwelling is destroyed, Yi Tianqing said. All right then. Yi Guchen smiled bitterly and shook his head. He finally understood why Yi Tianqing was so loved and respected. Not everyone had this kind of righteous heart. One could imagine how much of a sensation and discussion it would cause if someone like him, whose divine dwelling was destroyed, was promoted to the Jiankui position. Even the other dynasties would laugh at the Sword Dynasty, thinking that the Sword Dynasty had no capable people. Of course, for Yi Guqin, with the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, there was almost no doubt that he could rebuild his divine dwelling. The only requirement was that he needed an opportunity to transform. As the expedition to the Sacred Dynasty's hidden treasure came to an end, one could imagine what kind of huge waves it would cause in the 4 great dynasties. There were a total of 10 false sacred experts from the Sword Dynasty, who participated in the Sacred Dynasty's hidden treasure. However, when they returned, only 3 of them were left. 7 false sacred experts had fallen at once. Even a fool would know that there was a huge hidden danger in the Sword Dynasty. Moreover, the fall of 7 false sacred experts was definitely a huge blow to the Sword Dynasty. Moreover, the Sword Dynasty might have taken the Saint Dao fruit. This caused the other 3 dynasties to criticize the Sword Dynasty. Of course, in addition to this matter, there was another matter that was neither big nor small. It was bound to spread like wildfire. That was the matter of Yi Guqin's divine dwelling being destroyed by Huang Qianqiu. This scene was witnessed by many elites of the 4 great dynasties. Therefore, it was impossible to hide it. Chapter 1096. While Yi Guqin and the others were recuperating and returning to the Sword Dynasty, Tiandu Ridge, where the Hua family resided, several figures stood on top of a peak. The atmosphere was solemn and silent. The entire sky was filled with rolling dark clouds, which seemed to indicate the mood of the people present. The aura of each of these people was incomparably powerful and terrifying. They were all false saint experts. They were the leaders of the Hua family. Any one of them could make the Sword Dynasty tremble with a stomp of their feet. Among them, the leader was a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. His face was long and narrow, and his eyes were filled with incomparable coldness. He was the head of the Hua family, Hua Tianyue, a famous false saint expert. Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai are dead. Xiao'er is also dead. Hua Tianyue's voice was incomparably cold. Hua Wuxia was Hua Tianyue's biological son. This time, Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai, the 2 false saints of the Hua family, were leading the way to the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. It was supposed to be a foolproof plan, so Hua Tianyue was very assured to let Hua Wuxia go, treating it as an experience. However, this time they would never return. Family head, what is going on? Logically speaking, our plan was flawless. A false saint elder of the Hua family said in a deep voice. He was puzzled. According to the news from the Sacred Dynasty's treasure, the plan was indeed a success. However, the final result was directly reversed. The only situation that is different from the plan is that Duge Wubai is with Yi Tianqing and the others. Hua Tianyue's face was cold and gloomy. This is just a coincidence. Even if Duge Wubai is a natural saint, he's just a minor character now. How could he cause our plan to fail? It's even more impossible for him to cause the deaths of Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai. Another Hua family elder shook his head. They would never believe that Yi Guqin was the cause of the failure of this plan. I don't know about that, but I do know that the little bastard killed Xiao'er, so he must die. Next, inform the other aristocratic families that the plan has changed. We have to take action now. Hua Tianyue said in a deep voice. Yes. Several Hua family false saints nodded, their eyes filled with ferocity. Their original plan was to kill Yi Tianqing and the others in the Sacred Dynasty legacy. Then, he would naturally take over the power of the Sword Dao Alliance. Even if there were other rogue cultivators and pseudo-saints in the Sword Dao Alliance. However, without heavenly sentiment, those rogue cultivators and false saints had no leader, and were nothing to worry about. Once those rogue cultivators and false saints were subdued, the entire Sword Dynasty would be completely under the control of the 5 aristocratic families. But now, not only had the plan to kill Yi Tianqing failed, but the 5 aristocratic families had also lost 6 pseudo-saints. The Hua family had suffered the greatest loss. Not only had 2 pseudo-saints died, but even the strongest genius, Hua Wuxia, had died. One could imagine how furious Hua Tianyue and the others were. As the Hua family issued the order, The other four aristocratic families also received the news. The Yin family, Ouyang family, and Shengguan family were all shocked and furious. After all, the death of a pseudo-saint was no small matter. On the other side, in a pavilion in the Jiang family's residence, a middle-aged man dressed like a scholar sighed deeply. He was the head of the Jiang family, Jiang Wen. As for the deputy head of the family, Jiang Wu, who had died in the Sacred Dynasty legacy, he was his younger brother. Jiang Wu, I've already advised you not to get involved, but you didn't listen. Now that he's dead, even if the aristocratic families can seize power in the end, it's useless to you. Jiang Wen shook his head and sighed. Among the 5 aristocratic families, the Jiang family could be considered the least ambitious family. Jiang Wen even had some friendship with the proud divine state and heavenly sentiment. Therefore, in the beginning, Jiang Wen actually didn't want the Jiang family to participate in this plan. However, Jiang Wu's strong request and the other 4 aristocratic families forced the Jiang family to participate in the plan in the name of aristocratic families. They couldn't stay out of it. Under these circumstances, Jiang Wen had no choice but to let Jiang Wu participate. But now Jiang Wu had died. Sigh, but the silver lining is that me honor is fine. Jiang Wen sighed again. Jiang Wu's death made Jiang Wen sigh. But in the end, Jiang Wu had only himself to blame. Jiang Wen was a reasonable person and wouldn't vent his anger on heavenly sentiment and the others. The only thing that made him happy was that his son, Jiang Fengmian, was fine. That Duga Wu Bai was willing to use a longevity fruit to save me on Earth. I owe him a favor. Jiang Wen thought to himself. Jiang Fengmian had already sent him a message to inform him of the situation, including the matter of Yi Guqin saving him. It didn't take long for the news of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure to spread in the Sword Dynasty. For a moment, the people of the Sword Dynasty were in a panic, as if a storm was coming. As expected, not long after, the 5 aristocratic families took action one after another. Hua Tianyue and the others knew that if heavenly sentiment returned to the Sword Dynasty, she would definitely not let them go. If the 5 aristocratic families were to be defeated one by one, it would be extremely disadvantageous for them. Therefore, they took action first and joined forces. At the same time, they completely exposed the connections they had built up over the years. There were a total of 360 lords at the venerable level in the 360 ridges of the Sword Dynasty. Among them, there were more than 200 lords who chose to rise up and support the aristocratic families. Among the remaining lords, there were probably only 100 or so lords who were completely loyal to the Sword Dao Alliance. There were also dozens of lords who didn't stand on any side and chose to stay out of the matter. After that, the 5 aristocratic families moved everyone in their families out of the Sword Dynasty at an extremely fast speed overnight. Together with more than 200 venerable lords, they left with the 5 aristocratic families. With the departure of these lords, the entire Sword Dynasty instantly became chaotic. If there was no lord to manage a ridge, one could imagine how chaotic it would be. What was more serious was that with the departure of the 5 aristocratic families from the Sword Dynasty, the strength of the Sword Dao Alliance almost fell by half. In the heyday of the Sword Dao Alliance, there were 40 to 50 false saint experts, which was definitely a terrifying number. But now in the entire Sword Dao Alliance, there were only a dozen false saints in the rogue cultivator camp. And the total number of false saints in the 5 aristocratic families was definitely more than 20. This kind of division was absolutely fatal to the Sword Dao Alliance. Although a dozen false saints was not a small number, but it was absolutely impossible to suppress the top dynasties such as the War God Dynasty, the Maluo Dynasty, and the domineering Saber Dynasty. In addition, when the 5 aristocratic families left the Sword Dynasty, the head of the Hua family, Hua Tianyue, had also released a message. Yi Tianqing has lost her mind and killed a total of 6 false saints from the 5 aristocratic families in one fell swoop. Such an action has infuriated both man and God, and punished both heaven and earth. We, the 5 aristocratic families, will never let this go. The Sword Dynasty needs a new leader. When we return, the Sword Dynasty will have a new leader. When this news spread, it also caused an uproar in the Sword Dynasty once again. The truth was always in the hands of a few people, and most people were blind. This action made the Sword Dynasty even more chaotic. Among them, there were those who believed in Yi Tianqing, and those who took the opportunity to smear her name. The various forces clashed with each other, causing bloody casualties. For a time, the Sword Dynasty, which was known as the country of sword cultivators and the head of the 100 great dynasties, was in a precarious situation. Chapter 1097. Damn it, how could they do this? Are they trying to drag the Sword Dynasty into the abyss? A huge ship was traveling through the void. Yi Guqin and the others were sitting cross-legged on the ship. In a few days they would return to the Sword Dynasty. But they already knew some things about the Sword Dynasty. The one who spoke was Kempo. He was born in the Sword Dynasty, grew up in the Sword Dynasty, and grew up in the Sword Alliance. He had great feelings for the Sword Dynasty and the Sword Alliance. Naturally, he didn't want to see the Sword Dynasty become like this. It's useless to be anxious now. The 5 fake saint families obviously have a backup plan. I'm afraid the Sword Dynasty's biggest problem is the following situation, Yi Guqin said. And that Jian Shisan, we treated him as a brother, but in the end, thinking of Jian Shisan, Kempo clenched his fists, his chest heaving up and down. He still couldn't let go of Jian Shisan's betrayal. Jian Shi still trusted Jian Shisan until his death. I have some ideas about Jian Shisan, but I'll have to wait until we return to the Sword Dynasty to be sure. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed with a dark light. He had learned before that Jian Shisan was a person who had been separated for a long time. Logically speaking, there was no way he would betray the aristocratic families. There must be some hidden reason behind this. But Yi Guqin would have to wait until they returned to the Sword Dynasty to find out the answer. After that, Yi Tianqing and the others returned to the Sword Dynasty as fast as they could. According to past practice, after the Sword Sun battle, the Sword Sun conferment ceremony would be held a few days later to announce the next Sword Sun candidate. But with the Sword Dynasty's current situation, it was obviously impossible to hold the ceremony immediately. After returning to the Sword Dynasty, Yi Guqin and the others handed over some of the treasures they found in the Holy Dynasty's treasure trove for evaluation. Yi Guqin also handed over 2 longevity fruits. Of course, those 5 soul origin crystals, and the soul-devouring clan's soul annihilation flame, were naturally taken by Yi Guqin himself. As for the sage Dao fruit, he had also obtained Yi Tianqing's permission to keep it. However, that sage Dao fruit would also be counted in his grade. Strictly speaking, Yi Guqin had contributed greatly to the 4 Saint Dao fruits that Heaven Sentiment had obtained. If it weren't for Yi Guqin's help, they wouldn't even be able to survive, let alone obtain the sage Dao fruit. Therefore, there was actually no suspense about the first place in this Sword Sun battle. After the betrayal of the 5 aristocratic families, the Sword Sons and heavenly prides of the aristocratic families who participated in the Sword Sun battle were obviously completely disqualified. Therefore, the next 13 Sword Sons would only be selected from Sacred Cliff College, Tianxian College, Jianjinghong, and the Lone Cultivator Sword Sun. As for the other 3 academies that were controlled by the aristocratic families, the heavenly prides of the aristocratic families would not be able to obtain the position of Sword Sun. After returning to the Sword Dynasty, Yi Tianqing, Confuzi Wu Hongyan, and the others rushed to the Sword Monarch Ridge without stopping. The Sword Monarch Ridge was the center of the entire Sword Dynasty, where the Sword Dao Alliance was located. The location of the 5 Academies tournament that was previously held by the 5 major academies was the Sword Monarch City of the Sword Monarch Ridge. After returning to the Sword Monarch City, Yi Tianqing immediately began to command the Sword Dao Alliance to suppress the chaos in the Sword Dynasty. With the return of Yi Tianqing, the stabilizing force, the entire Sword Dao Alliance began to operate again. More than 10 lone cultivator false saints were sent to various chaotic areas by Yi Tianqing to suppress the chaos. As for where the 5 aristocratic families were located, it was already empty. Yi Tianqing did not have the energy to divert her attention to track down the 5 aristocratic families. However, she believed that the 5 aristocratic families would definitely make a comeback and think of ways to seize control of the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin did not head to the Sword Monarch Ridge. Instead, he returned to Sacred Cliff College. Jian Jinghong Kempo Muxingzu, and the others also stayed in Sacred Cliff College. Many disciples in Sacred Cliff College also knew that Yi Guqin's spiritual abode had been destroyed by Huang Qianqiu. However, no one looked down on or mocked Yi Guqin because of this. This was because Yi Guqin had long been the faith and hope of all the disciples in Sacred Cliff College. From the start of the 5 Academies tournament until now, after the 3 Heavenly Gates tournament, his reputation was first revealed. After bravely passing the 20th level of Mount Saint Crossing, he established himself as a natural saint. After the trip to the Sword Catacomb, he broke through 10,000 feet. After the 5 Academies tournament, he swept away all the heroes and dominated the world with his sword. After Gu Jianmu broke the records of his predecessors, his talent was unparalleled. Along the way, when had Yi Guqin not shocked the world and created miracles? Therefore, many disciples in Sacred Cliff College hoped that Yi Guqin could rebuild his spiritual abode and reach the top of the heavenly legends again. Of course, this was only what the Sacred Cliff College disciples thought. The other heavenly legends of the Sword Dynasty, and even the heavenly legends of the other dynasties, either looked on coldly or mocked Yi Guqin's spiritual abode being destroyed. It was not easy to reach the top. After reaching the top and falling into the abyss, it was even more difficult to climb back up again. However, Yi Guqin himself was not affected by the outside world. To Yi Guqin, rebuilding his spiritual abode was almost a certainty. He just needed some luck. Yi Guqin wasn't in a hurry either. He spent a few days recuperating from his injuries. My body is fine, but to rebuild my spiritual abode, I need luck, Yi Guqin muttered to himself in the cave dwelling. After reaching the divine dwelling stage, Yi Guqin needed to pass through the 4 tribulations of earth, water, fire and wind. Each tribulation corresponded to a kind of power, and was also a kind of transformation. If he could endure the 4 transformations, then the spiritual abode that Yi Guqin cultivated would be unprecedentedly powerful. But to rebuild and transform the spiritual abode, he needed to find a secret realm of the corresponding attribute. For example, the earth tribulation needed to find a place where the earth dragon veins gathered, or a place where the earth chi was rich. And after enduring endless tempering, the spiritual abode could be rebuilt and transformed. But how could such a rare secret realm be so easy to find? I heard that there is a great formation in the skyless sword domain that relies on the power of the earth veins to operate. It is extremely powerful, and even poses a great threat to false saint experts. I wonder if it is a secret realm of opportunity. Yi Guqin pondered. The skyless sword domain was the most mysterious and dangerous of the 4 great secret realms of the Sword Dynasty. Even the Alliance Master, the proud divine continent, was trapped in it and unable to escape. It was clear how dangerous and difficult it was. Although the skyless sword domain is very dangerous, I still have to explore it later. Moreover, this secret realm is related to the 7th generation sword master, Nameless. As a sword master, I should be able to find something. Yi Guqin decided in his heart that he would definitely make a trip to Heavenless Sword Realm. Moreover, Heavenly Sentiment had also asked him to go to Heavenless Sword Realm to explore and see if he could find traces of the proud divine continent. But at present, the chaos in the Sword Dynasty had not yet subsided, and Yi Tianqing obviously did not have the time. Yi Guqin could only wait for a while. Right, there is also the matter of Jian Shursan. Yi Guqin suddenly thought. He also remembered that Jian Shursan seemed to be under the control of Hua Wuxia in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. Could it be? The root is the Hua family? Thinking of this, Yi Guqin directly stood up and called Jian Jinghong, Kempo Jianwu, and Sword 7. They set off and rushed to the Hua family's residence in Tiandu Ridge. Chapter 1098. Tiandu Ridge, the Hua family's residence. After the Hua family left the Sword Dynasty, the entire Hua family's residence became empty. There were also many people who came to the Hua family's residence to search, hoping to pick up some scraps. However, when the Hua family left, they packed up everything and didn't leave behind any resources or valuable items. Thus, it didn't take long for the Hua family's residence to become empty and desolate, with no one coming to visit. However, at this moment, there was the sound of rushing wind. A figure rushed into the Hua family's residence with hurried steps. He wore a dusty gray robe and a child's toy like a ghost mask on his face. It was Jian Shisan, who had returned to the Sword Dynasty. After Jian Shisan killed Sword Ten and Jian Shi, he naturally couldn't follow Yi Tianqing. However, he also didn't follow the sword sons and prodigies of the aristocratic families. Instead, he returned to the Sword Dynasty alone. Looking at the empty and desolate Hua family's residence, Jian Shisan felt an inexplicable sense of panic. It was hard to imagine that the usually aloof and indifferent Jian Shisan would feel this way. Where are you? Where are you? Please don't let anything happen to you. Jian Shisan murmured as he searched around the Hua family's residence. Finally, Jian Shisan stood in front of a dusty attic. This was the last place he hadn't explored. Jian Shisan entered the attic to search. He quickly discovered a mechanism on the wall. After turning on the mechanism, a bottomless tunnel appeared. Jian Shisan took a deep breath, feeling that his breathing was a bit chaotic. He forcefully suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and went deeper into the tunnel. Finally, an underground secret room appeared before his eyes. At the same time, a little girl appeared before his eyes. When he saw the little girl, Jian Shisan's heart twitched violently as if it was being clenched tightly by someone. Because the little girl had collapsed on the ground. She lay in a pool of blood, like a butterfly sealed in blood-red amber. Beautiful, innocent, but cold. No, why? Jian Shisan's entire body began to tremble. Step by step, he walked towards the girl. Every step was as heavy as 10,000 caddies. Little sister. Big brother is back. I'm back to see you. Jian Shisan's hoarse voice trembled as he slowly walked up to the girl and picked up her blood-stained body. The girl was petite and cold. She had already stopped breathing. A flower of blood bloomed in her heart. Jian Shisan instantly understood. His younger sister, the little girl, had a miniature array formation placed in her heart. Hua Wuxia was the one who controlled the array formation. Before Hua Wuxia died in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove, he secretly activated the array formation. At the same time that he perished, Sword 13's sister perished as well. Why, aha! Jian Shisan roared to the sky, tears falling uncontrollably. The grimace mask on his face also fell at the same time. This toy-like grimace mask was personally made for him by his younger sister. Under the mask, Jian Shisan's ordinary face was revealed. His teary eyes were scarlet and filled with despair. He endured loneliness and worked undercover for so many years. In exchange, he only received a cold corpse. Little sister, Big brother promised you that he would give you a carefree future. For this, it doesn't matter even if my hands are stained with the blood of innocent people and become a shameful traitor. But why? Jian Shisan felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing at his heart. Why did the heavens always tease him like this? At the same time, outside the Hua family's residence, several figures flashed out. It was Yi Guqin and the others who had rushed to Tiandu Ridge. This is the Hua family's residence, but it's already empty. Jian Jinghong said. Will Jian Shisan really come back? If I really meet him, I will definitely kill him with my own hands to avenge Jian Shi and the others. Kenpo could not hide the murderous intent in his tone. To be able to make a calm person like Kenpo reveal such murderous intent, it was obvious how angry he was in his heart. Indeed, in fact, we all know how much Jian Shi loves Jian Shisan. When faced with Jian Shi, he actually did it. He is simply a beast. Jian Wu and Seventh Swordsman both said in a cold tone. Alright, let's not talk about it first. Let's go in and explore first. Yi Guqin waved his hand. He felt that Jian Shisan might really have some secrets. He remembered the banquet held at Sacred Cliff College. Only Jian Shisan sat alone on the rock wall drinking alone, looking desolate and lonely. It was hard for Yi Guqin to believe that such a person was an unpardonable evil person. After that, Yi Guqin and the others also entered the Hua family's residence. Not long after, they heard a noise coming from one of the pavilions. Yi Guqin and the others landed outside the pavilion and stared inside. The sound of footsteps could be heard. Everyone was on high alert. A figure slowly walked out. Jian Shisan was dressed in a gray robe. His face was blank as if he had lost his soul. Jian Shisan, you're really here. When they saw the person walking out of the pavilion, Kenpo and the others could not suppress their murderous intent. Wait! Yi Guchen suddenly waved his hand. At this time, everyone noticed that Jian Shisan was holding the body of a little girl in one hand. In the other hand, he was holding the grimace mask. He raised his dull eyes and glanced at Yi Guchen and the others. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water, without the slightest fluctuation. The atmosphere was silent for a moment. After a long time, Jian Shisan said in a hoarse voice, "If you want to kill me, then do it." "I just want to know why?" Kenpo gritted his teeth and said coldly. It doesn't matter." Jian Shisan smiled sadly. Then Yi Guchen and the others finally heard Jian Shisan's story. Jian Shisan's parents died when they were very young. Only the brother and sister relied on each other for survival. However, the two of them lived a life of hunger and cold. However, Jian Shisan had an extraordinary talent in swordsmanship. He had used this to protect his sister many times. Perhaps because he was used to killing since he was young, Jian Shisan learned the lifeless swordsmanship, which was more inclined towards killing. However, there was one time when the siblings were in mortal danger. In the end, the Hua family stepped in and saved him and his sister. Since then, his sister had been staying in the Hua family. The members of the Hua clan, on the other hand, assigned Sword 13 to join the sect of a wandering cultivator expert and become a spy for the Hua clan. Moreover, the Hua family promised that one day, when the Hua family took control of the Sword dynasty, they would set him and his sister free. After that, Jian Shisan secretly investigated and found that the Hua family was the one who caused that mortal danger. However, Jian Shisan had no choice at that time. His sister was under house arrest in the Hua family. Even he couldn't see her. Helpless, Jian Shisan could only work hard to complete his undercover mission. In order to avoid unnecessary feelings, Jian Shisan was a loner. He never got close to Kenpo, Jianxi, and the others. However, even Jian Shisan didn't expect this. The heavens were playing tricks on him. In the end, he ended up like this. He killed Jianxi, who loved him, with his own hands. His sister still couldn't escape the evil hands of the Hua family. Nothing could be more tragic than this. Chapter 1099. After listening to Jian Shisan's story, Yi Guchen and the others were silent. Kenpo and the others' killing intent silently dissipated. What else could they say? If they were in Jian Shisan's shoes, they could only passively accept their tragic fate. Why didn't you tell us all this? Kenpo clenched his teeth, not knowing whether it was hatred or sorrow in his heart. What's the use of telling you? If the news leaked, my sister would be executed immediately. Jian Shisan smiled bitterly. Yi Guchen sighed deeply, looked at Jian Shisan and said, "Jian Shisan, turn back. You still have a chance to make up for it. You can still be the Sword Son and help the Sword dynasty deal with the Hua family." Jian Shisan shook his head. His body was like a piece of wood, and his heart was like dead ashes. "It doesn't matter. I can't even protect my family. What's the use of being the Sword Son? What's the use of the sword in my hand? What's the use of taking my life?" Jian Shisan looked up at the sky and smiled bitterly, blood dripping from the corner of his eyes. It was unknown whether it was blood or tears. Seeing that Jian Shisan's condition was not right, Yi Guchen frowned and hurriedly rushed out. "Duguwubai, this life is what I owe Jianxi. I'm returning it to her now. I only hope that after I die, I can be buried with my sister. Because when she was young, she was very afraid of the cold, very afraid of loneliness." In Jian Shisan's hand, the blood-red bloodbath sword flashed. The sword tip reversed and pierced through his own chest and heart. Warm blood spurted out. Jian Shisan, Kenpo, Jian Jinghong, and the others' faces all changed. Puchi Jian Shisan's body fell to the ground, still holding his sister. Little sister. The Yellow Springs is too cold, big brother will accompany you. Don't be afraid." Jian Shisan's lips curled into a smile. He said the last words of his life and stopped breathing. The atmosphere was terrifyingly silent. Damn it. Kenpo's breathing became chaotic. This was the first time he had lost his composure like this. Hua family, I Jian Jinghong, will witness your destruction with my own eyes. Jian Jinghong clenched his fists tightly as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. If it weren't for the Hua family, Jian Shisan's tragedy wouldn't have happened. In the end, the main culprits were the 5 pseudo-saint aristocratic families. Sigh. Yi Guchen let out a long sigh. As the soul of the sword demon, he was already used to the vicissitudes of life. However, at this moment, he couldn't help but sigh. To put it bluntly, it was all about strength. If Jian Shisan had absolute strength, he might have been able to avoid this tragedy. Just like Yi Guchen, if he had great strength, he wouldn't have watched Su Jianshi being sealed in the Emperor's sword and taken away by Di Haotian in the Tianhuang Plains. I still need strength. When I go back this time, I'll start refining my doppelganger. Yi Guchen was even more determined to become stronger. Whether it was refining his doppelganger or rebuilding his divine abode, they were all means to become stronger. After that, Yi Guchen and the others buried Jian Shisan and his sister in a peach blossom forest, and erected a nameless tombstone. Yi Guchen held the ghost mask in his hand. He also finally understood why Sword 13 was wearing this devilish mask that looked like a child's toy on his face. It was because his sister gave it to him. Jian Shisan, I will definitely use this ghost mask to witness the destruction of the Hua family. Yi Guchen murmured as he put the ghost mask into his origin ring. After sighing with emotion, everyone left. Kenpo and the others were going back to the Sword Monarch Ridge to report this matter to the Sword Dao Alliance. Yi Guchen was alone and separated from them. Because he still had one thing to do. That was to give the fruit of saintly way to Leng Qianhen. Yi Guchen could foresee that the 5 pseudo-saint families wouldn't let this matter rest. The next test was the Sword Dynasty's greatest calamity. If he could rope in an expert like Leng Qianhen, it would be very helpful for the Sword Dynasty's future. Leng Qianhen had been cultivating in the Sword Tomb. Yi Guchen didn't stop and rushed to the Sword Tomb's location, the Heavenly Sword Mountain. A few days later, Yi Guchen arrived at the Sword Tomb of the Sky Sword Mountain. The chaos in the Sword Dynasty hadn't been completely quelled yet. Therefore, the Sword Tomb, which used to be incomparably crowded, was now sparsely populated. Yi Guchen's figure flashed as he stepped directly into the Sword Tomb. Now, the sword chi pressure in the Sword Tomb was no longer a threat to Yi Guchen. He had the creation-level sword will of all creation, so this kind of sword pressure was useless against him. Soon, Yi Guchen arrived at Leng Qianhen's cultivation place. The surroundings were covered in silver, and the sky was filled with frost and snow. Come in. Before Yi Guchen stepped in, Leng Qianhen's voice sounded in his ears. Leng Qianhen must have sensed Yi Guchen's arrival. Yi Guchen's figure flashed in, and immediately saw Leng Qianhen. Leng Qianhen was sitting cross-legged on a hill. His long gray hair was like frost and snow. There were 2 crisscrossing scars on his face, and his eyes were like cold stars in the sky. His temperament, as usual, was proud and cold, like a lone wolf in the snow. Senior Leng Qianhen. Yi Guchen cupped his hands slightly. Yi Guchen, you're here. I've heard about what happened in the nest of 10,000 demons. You're really lucky, Leng Qianhen said lightly. In the expedition to the Sacred Dynasty's hidden treasure, many geniuses had died, some venerables had also died, and even a few false saints had died. Yi Guchen was indeed lucky to be able to come back alive. I was just lucky, Yi Guchen said with a faint smile. Well, what are you here for this time? Didn't I give you the communication jade slip? Leng Qianhen asked. He didn't expect that Yi Guchen would come to give him the fruit of the Sage Dao. Senior, have you forgotten our agreement? I'm here to fulfill it, Yi Guchen said. Agreement? Could it be? Leng Qianhen's eyes first flashed with a wisp of doubt, and then there was a sudden shock in his eyes. Given Leng Qianhen's character, to be able to make him show surprise, it showed how shocked his heart was. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Yi Guchen flipped his wrist, and a fruit imprinted with the aura of the Sage Dao appeared in his hand. As soon as the fruit appeared, Fang Qiu's eyes lit up. There seemed to be sacred runes of the law looming in the surrounding void. Leng Qianhen's breath was slightly disturbed, and snow fluttered all over the sky, indicating that his heart was not calm. Is this the fruit of the sage Tao? Leng Qianhen stared at the fruit. That's right. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Leng Qianhen exhaled softly. He didn't suspect that Yi Guchen was lying, nor did he suspect the fruit of the sage Tao, because Leng Qianhen himself was an extremely strong false saint. Although his comprehension of the law was not very deep, it was definitely not shallow. He could feel that the power of law contained in the fruit of the sage Tao was indeed the essence left behind by a sage. Leng Qianhen took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in his heart, and stared at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen, do you know the value of this fruit of the sage Tao? Of course I do. The fruit of the sage Tao is almost priceless, especially for a false saint expert. Yi Guchen said truthfully. Then are you still willing to give it to me? Leng Qianhen asked. Although a fruit of the sage Tao is priceless, it can't compare to a promise from me. I will do what I say, and I will not go back on my word. Yi Guchen's words were sonorous and resolute. Chapter 1100. Hearing Yi Guchen's resolute words. Even Leng Qianhen stared straight at Yi Guchen with a strange light in his eyes. Yi Guchen was indeed different from anyone he had met before. Leng Qianhen was proud and aloof. He never lived in groups, like a lone wolf. He believed that most people in this world were vulgar and boring. Therefore, he refused to communicate with others, and focused on pursuing his own martial arts and sword Tao. However, Yi Guchen was very compatible with Leng Qianhen's temperament. That kind of feeling was like the appreciation between heroes. Although Yi Guchen's strength was not on the same level as his, this feeling was very strong. Leng Qianhen naturally did not know that Yi Guchen's young body hid a heart full of vicissitudes. The former sword demon Dugawubai also lived in groups. He lived alone on a peak with only a divine eagle as his companion. To some extent, the former Dugawubai and Leng Qianhen were the same kind of people. They were the kind of experts who looked indifferent on the outside, but were proud swordsmen on the inside. Therefore, Leng Qianhen had this feeling of appreciation. And now, Yi Guchen freely gave away the fruit of the holy way just to fulfill a promise he once made. This made Leng Qianhen feel a trace of admiration from the bottom of his heart. Haha, Yi Guchen, you are very interesting. You are different from others. You are not a vulgar mortal. Leng Qianhen smiled. Leng Qianhen had not smiled like this for a long time. It is my honor to be able to make Senior Leng look at me differently. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. There's no need to call me Senior Leng. If you don't mind, just call me Brother Leng. I won't hesitate to accept this Saint Tao fruit. Leng Qianhen didn't like to beat around the bush and directly took the holy Tao fruit. Yi Guchen smiled calmly. He did not feel the slightest reluctance to part with the sacred Tao fruit. Not to mention that Yi Guchen had no use for the sage Tao fruit right now. On the 20th level of Mount Saint Crossing, he had received the baptism of Saint Tao laws. In terms of value, it was far from what a single Saint Tao fruit could compare to. Therefore, the sage Tao fruit was of little value to Yi Guchen. It would be better to give it to Leng Qianhen as a favor and fulfill his promise. Yi Guchen, regardless of whether I can transcend mortality and become a saint in the end, I will never forget your kindness. Just send me a message when you need me, said Leng Qianhen. Yi Guchen was a man of his word. Leng Qianhen would naturally return the favor. Although he had a cold personality, he was extremely grateful. This could be seen from the Tianhuang Plains. Even in the face of an overlord-level force, Leng Qianhen did not shrink back, and was still willing to return Duan Tianfeng's favor. Thank you, Brother Leng. Yi Guchen cupped his hands and smiled. Leng Qianhen's promise before was because of Duan Tianfeng's face. But now Leng Qianhen really owed Yi Guchen a favor. One could imagine that if there was any turmoil in the Sword Dynasty in the future, as long as Yi Guchen needed it, Leng Qianhen would not hesitate even in the face of an overlord-level force. Well, Yi Guchen, I need to go into seclusion for a while. If it goes well, the next time you see me, I might be different from now. Leng Qianhen was in a good mood and smiled faintly. Then I wish Brother Leng can transcend mortality and become a saint. I won't disturb you any further. Yi Guchen replied. Then, Yi Guchen left the sword tomb. Leng Qianhen also left the sword tomb, and went to a secluded place to prepare for his tribulation. With this matter over, Yi Guqin only had one more important thing left. Refining a clone. To Yi Guqin, refining a clone was the most important thing. It was related to whether he could control the power of the God Devourer sword. As for the power of the God Devourer sword, Yi Tianqing had already proven it in the Sacred Dynasty's inheritance. So Yi Guqin was looking forward to refining a clone. Now, if Yi Guqin wanted to become stronger, there were only two ways. One was to transform his spiritual abode, and the other was to refine a clone. To transform his spiritual abode, he had to at least wait until he entered the Heavenless Sword realm, and see if there were any opportunities. As for refining a clone, everything was ready and the materials were all ready. Then Yi Guqin left the Heavenly Sword Mountain, and rushed back to Sacred Cliff College. After returning to Sacred Cliff College, Yi Guqin directly asked Bei Xian Elder to prepare a secret room with a sealing array for him. Yi Guqin did not want to expose his clone to the world too early, because this clone was related to the God Devourer sword, and was very important. It was best not to reveal it. So Yi Guqin did not tell anyone about refining a clone. He did not even tell his closest friends, Mu Xingzu and the others. In the secret room, Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground. Beside him, Su Qingyu's essence spirit appeared. "Senior Su, can we begin?" asked Yi Guqin. Although it was extremely important to refine the doppelganger, Yi Guqin remained calm and steady. To be honest, I can't guarantee a 100% success rate in refining a clone. Also, in order to let the clone be of one mind with you, you have to split a portion of your spiritual C's power. If it were an ordinary person, the success rate of refining a clone would be greatly reduced if their spiritual C's power is insufficient. But you're different. Your special spiritual C is amazing. There shouldn't be too much of a problem. Su Qingyu said that he could not guarantee a 100% success rate. But from his tone, it was clear that he was very confident in Yi Guqin. That's good. The 3-year deadline to save Su Jianshi is almost over. I don't have time to delay, said Yi Guqin firmly. Within 3 years, Yi Guqin had to have the power to defeat Di Haotian. But now Yi Guqin could not deal with Huang Qianxiu, who was slightly weaker than Di Haotian. Therefore he was a little anxious. And this clone might be the key to defeating Di Haotian. All right. Since you said so, I'll help you succeed no matter what price I have to pay. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, Su Qingyu's eyes were filled with gratification. Then, Yi Guqin took out the God Devourer sword in his dantian. The sword guard of the God Devourer sword was shaped like an open beast's mouth. A chaotic whirlpool spun inside like a black hole. There was a chaotic space hidden in it. It was rumored that the primordial Taoye's body was a chaotic void. There were 2 things in the chaotic space. One was a cloud of connate purple qi. It was Zidonglai's special ability. It was absorbed into the God Devourer sword, and was preserved. Connate purple qi was known as a cultivation accelerator. It could greatly increase the cultivation speed of talents. The other thing was half a pure demon body. This pure demon body was refined by the Demon Sword Emperor, Jitian, using the devouring power of the God Devourer sword. This body was originally given to him by Jitian to use, but in the end he only got half of it. The other half was given to Yi Guqin. And this clone refined from half a pure demon body could perfectly control the God Devourer sword without being eroded by the sword's demonic intent. Chapter 1101. After taking out half of the pure demon body, and the connate purple qi, Yi Guqin took out the 3 treasures needed to refine the clone. There was a jade bottle containing an elixir. It was the bone molding elixir. In addition, there was an emerald green crystal that looked like a heart. It exuded an extremely rich life essence. It was the longevity wood core. Finally, there were 6 soul source crystals. 5 of them were translucent crystals the size of pigeon eggs. They were saint crystals. There was another crystal the size of a fist. It was completely black and exuded a powerful, ominous and cold aura. It was the soul source crystal of Hunmia Yen, an elite of the Soul Devourer clan from the Dark World. Seeing the 6 soul source crystals, Yi Guqin hesitated slightly and asked Su Qingyu, "Senior Su, do I need to use all 6 of them?" Su Qingyu replied, Actually, under normal circumstances, one saint crystal would be enough. But in your case, I'm afraid one is not enough. But I want to tell you that you have to be careful with the soul source crystal of the Soul Devourer clan. Senior Su, what do you mean? Yi Guchen looked surprised. After all, I don't know much about the Soul Devourer clan. As an alien race from the Dark World, and one that is proficient in the Tao of Souls, Hunmia Yan's soul source crystal must be more powerful than these 5 saint crystals. But at the same time, no one has ever used the soul source crystal of the Soul Devourer clan to refine a clone. So if you use the soul source crystal of the Soul Devourer clan, there are only 3 possibilities. First, the sea of consciousness created will be unstable and collapse, and the refining of the clone will fail. Second, the Soul Devourer clan is an alien race from the Dark World. Using the soul source crystal may affect the consciousness of the clone, and cause it to fall into chaos and madness. Su Qingyu paused for a moment as he spoke. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. Now that he heard it, using the soul source crystal of the Soul Devourer clan would do him no good. He asked again, what about the third possibility? Finally, Su Qingyu frowned slightly and said, the soul source crystal of the Soul Devourer clan perfectly fused with the clone. In that case, it will create a clone with the talent of the Soul Devourer clan. Talent of the Soul Devourer clan? Hearing this, Yi Guchen was shocked. Yi Guchen had already witnessed the power of the Soul Devouring clan. It could be said that without the help of the God Devourer sword, Su Qingyu and Heavenly Sentiment would not be able to deal with Hunmia Yan. There were also the terrifying divine abilities of the Soul Devouring clan, the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, and so on. All of these showed how powerful the Soul Devouring clan was. But I want to tell you that the Soul Devouring clan is an alien race in the Dark World. Everyone has the right to kill them. Even if they succeed in the end, there may be hidden dangers in the future, Su Qingyu warned. Yi Guchen understood the meaning of Su Qingyu's words. Even if the avatar had successfully fused with the soul-extinguishing flame soul source crystal in the end, this meant that the clone possessed the power of the Soul Devouring clan. The Soul Devouring clan was a foreign race from the Dark World. To the 9 regions, they were enemies. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would be targeted. However, Yi Guchen did not care about any of this. The history of the foreign races in the Dark World could be traced back to the era of the 100 races. After such a long time, other than those old antiques, almost no one knew about the Dark World's foreign races. It was even more impossible to recognize the power of the Soul Devouring clan. Therefore, there was no need to worry about this at the moment. Thinking of this, Yi Guchen's eyes flickered and he said, Senior Su, I've decided to use the Soul Devouring clan's soul origin crystal. Are you sure? Su Qingyu asked. I'm sure. My clone Yi Guchen must possess a powerful innate talent and power that can defeat those of the same generation. And if you want to obtain any power, you naturally have to pay the same risk and price. I'd rather fail than be mediocre. Yi Guchen's tone was resolute. What a good, I'd rather fail than be mediocre. Yi Guchen, I didn't misjudge you, Su Qingyu said with a smile. Yi Guchen's timidity, worrying about this and that, made Su Qingyu feel a little disappointed. After making the decision, the process of refining the clone finally began. Yi Guchen, first of all, used the special fire of heaven and earth to refine this half of the pure demon body and transform it into a complete body. Su Qingyu instructed. Yi Guchen nodded slightly, and in the blink of an eye, the pitch-black demonic heart flame rose. The pitch-black flame enveloped half of the pure demon body. Sizzling sounds of burning could be heard. At the same time, Su Qingyu also took action. A wave of soul power spread out, and began to transform the entire body. Su Qingyu formed a series of runes, and inserted them into the body. This was a method of refining the body that he had once obtained in a secret realm. After a few days, the original half of the body had been completely refined into a complete body. The body was slender and well-proportioned. There were no bulging muscles, but one could feel the monstrous power contained in the body. On the surface of the skin, there were some faint black demonic patterns that appeared from time to time, giving the entire body a mysterious and domineering demonic nature. I once obtained an extraordinary method of refining the body in a secret realm, but it had a very strong demonic nature, so I have never used it. Now it finally has a place to use it, Su Qingyu said. Oh, I see. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. In the eyes of Su Qingyu, a heavenly tribulation saint, it could be called an extraordinary method of refining the body. Obviously, it was not an ordinary thing. That method of refining the body is called the battle god demonic body. It requires demonic qi to cultivate. This pure demon body happens to meet the requirements. After refining, it should be able to reach the first revolution of the battle god demonic body, Su Qingyu said. According to Su Qingyu's explanation, the battle god demonic body was divided into 9 revolutions. With each revolution, the body's strength would skyrocket. Moreover, it could rely on demonic qi and devour other people's blood and essence to cultivate. Although the demonic nature was very strong, its power was also extremely shocking. If cultivated to the extreme, it would have the power to reach the 9th revolution of the battle god demonic body and destroy the world. That's the best. My main body will cultivate the ancient god's tactics, and my doppelganger will cultivate the battle god demonic body. The two will not interfere with each other. Yi Guqin nodded and said, although the ancient god's tactics was powerful, it was enough as long as the main body cultivated it. The main body and doppelganger cultivated different methods of refining the body. When the time came, the main body and doppelganger would merge together and superimpose the ancient god's tactics and the battle god demonic body. By then, how terrifying would Yi Guqin's body be? Even Yi Guqin could not imagine it. After refining the body, Su Qingyu took out the bone-molding Saint Pill again and put it into the doppelganger's mouth. Yi Guqin immediately saw that the body that had been refined was beginning to solidify and swell. Under the skin, bones spread out to support the body. Then, Su Qingyu stretched out his hand again and cut open the doppelganger's right chest with one hand. Then, he put the longevity wood core that looked like a heart and looked like an emerald into the doppelganger's body. If your doppelganger is refined successfully, it still needs the life essence of the longevity wood core to support it in the early stages. When it fully matures later, it will give birth to its own heart, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin nodded and then asked, but Senior Su, isn't the heart on the left? Su Qingyu smiled and said, you know it's on the left. If you pierce through the enemy's left chest during a fight, will you immediately think that the enemy is dead and let down your guard? I understand. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. Su Qingyu had changed the position of the heart, so that the enemy would mistake the doppelganger's left chest as the fatal part. In the end, the doppelganger's heart was on the right. In this way, it would undoubtedly increase the doppelganger's chances of survival and ability to fight back. When the doppelganger grew its own heart in the future, it would also be on the right. Next, the most important thing is to use the soul source crystal to give the doppelganger a soul, Su Qingyu said in a serious tone. Chapter 1102. The most difficult part of refining a doppelganger was not creating a physical body, but giving it a soul. The previous steps were all to create a perfect body for the doppelganger. The most important part was to give the doppelganger a soul. Generally speaking, most people who wanted to refine a doppelganger failed at this step. To refine a doppelganger that was perfectly compatible with oneself, a part of one's sea of consciousness had to be integrated into the doppelganger. However, this would undoubtedly cause great harm to the original body. The reason why Su Qingyu was confident that Yi Guqin could refine a doppelganger was because Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness was different from ordinary people's. It contained extremely vigorous soul energy. Therefore, Yi Guqin's success rate of refining a doppelganger would be much higher than ordinary people's. Let's begin. Yi Guqin, inject your soul energy into the soul-devouring crystal. Su Qingyu's expression became serious. Yi Guqin nodded slightly, and the sea of consciousness in his mind began to spin. Vigorous chaotic soul power spread out, and then surged into the soul-devouring clan's soul source crystal. Yi Guqin, the soul-devouring crystal might reject you. You must not stop, Su Qingyu warned. Yi Guchen held his breath and continued to spread his chaotic soul energy. In an instant, Yi Guchen felt all kinds of negative emotions coming from the soul-devouring crystal. It was cold and dark. It was like a demon god was whispering, tempting others to fall into hell. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand such mental torture. However, Yi Guchen remained calm and focused, concealing his spirit and qi. The sword demon's will was not afraid even when facing the heavenly tribulation of Mount Saint Crossing. Not to mention a test of this level. This situation lasted for a few days. Even Yi Guchen's chaotic sea of consciousness could not bear it any longer. At this moment, Su Qingyu spoke again. Yi Guchen, the next step is the most important. I will use my means to separate a part of your sea of consciousness. This kind of pain is 10,000 times more painful than having your bones crushed. You have to be mentally prepared. I understand. Yi Guchen exhaled deeply. Physical torture was far inferior to mental torture. And this kind of severing of the sea of consciousness was simply 10,000 times more painful than being torn apart by 5 horses, or being hacked into pieces. Yi Guchen broke out in a cold sweat as Su Qingyu began to execute his techniques. He felt as if a blunt axe was chopping down on his head. Yi Guchen's face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. However, he didn't let out a single scream. Even though he was clenching his teeth so hard that they bled, he still endured. I can't fail. I want to kill Gu Xiaoyang. We still have to suppress Huang Qianqiu. I still have to go to the Heavenly God Sword sect, kill Di Haoyan with my own hands, and save Su Jianshi. So I can't fail. Yi Guchen shouted coldly in his heart. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices at the same time. At the same time, a supreme pain that originated from the splitting of his soul was about to engulf Yi Guchen's consciousness. Su Qingyu reached out with his hand, and a ball of chaotic soul energy was separated from Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness. Only 2/3 of Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness was left, and the remaining 1/3 was separated by Su Qingyu. In the short term, Yi Guchen would be slightly affected. However, because of the uniqueness of the sea of consciousness, Yi Guchen would be able to recover in the end. Then, Su Qingyu merged 1/3 of his sea of consciousness into the soul devourer crystal. The soul energy isn't enough. Su Qingyu frowned slightly. Then he merged 3 saint-level soul crystals into the soul devourer crystal to fill the soul devourer crystal. 1 soul devourer crystal and 3 saint-level soul crystals. This clone's soul strength will be almost invincible, within the same level in the future. Su Qingyu was amazed. He felt as if he was about to create a peerless monster. In terms of soul strength, this clone wasn't any weaker than Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness. Due to the soul devourer's talent, the clone might even be stronger than the original in terms of soul Dao. After splitting 1/3 of his sea of consciousness, Yi Guchen opened his eyes. His body was sweating profusely, and his lips were as pale as paper. He was very weak, as if he had been seriously ill. Senior Su, did you succeed? Yi Guchen asked with concern. Next, I'll merge the sea of consciousness origin with my physical body. As long as this step is successful, the next step will be easy, Su Qingyu said. He merged the sea of consciousness origin with the soul devourer crystal and 3 saint-level soul crystals into the clone's mind. In an instant, endless black light surged and spread on the surface of the clone like a cocoon, wrapping it up. Next, it's time to merge the sea of consciousness origin with the physical body. Success or failure depends on this, Su Qingyu said. At this point, the main steps had been completed. Next, it was up to the heavens. If they could merge completely, they would create an unprecedented peerless monster. If they failed, all their hard work would be in vain. Just as the clone was brewing in the dark demonic cocoon, all of a sudden, dark clouds loomed over Sacred Cliff College. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The rumbling thunder rolled across the sky, as if it was a warning from the heavens. It was as if it was a sign that a peerless demon was about to be born. What's going on? Why did the sky suddenly change? Yet it was sunny just now. Why did it suddenly become so scary? Looking at the raging thunder and lightning and the pitch-black sky, all the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were on tenterhooks. This strange phenomenon did not only occur in Sacred Cliff College. The entire Sword Empire, and even places further away, were affected by it. What's going on? Is it Dugu Bai? In the college, Beishian Elder looked up at the sky. He remembered that Yi Guchen had asked him to borrow the secret room with the ceiling array. But on second thought, Beishian Elder sighed deeply and shook his head. His eyes were full of regret and regret. Sigh, it shouldn't be Dugu Bai. After all, his spiritual abode has been broken. Beishian Elder sighed in his heart. Just as everyone in Sacred Cliff College was discussing spiritedly. In the secret room, Yi Guchen took some pills to stabilize his weakened body. He stared at the black demonic cocoon without blinking. Yi Guchen could feel the terrifying power brewing in the demonic cocoon. It was as if a demonic god from the 9 underworlds was about to be born. I really don't know what kind of existence it will be. Su Qingyu sighed. He was also very curious about the final result. As time passed, Yi Guchen suddenly had a strange feeling. It was as if he was in a pitch-black place, and the longevity wood core in his body was constantly releasing life essence. This feeling, is it a doppelganger? Yi Guchen's heart trembled. This experience was as if Yi Guchen's 5 senses were placed in another body. At the same time, the dark demonic cocoon that had been silent all this time finally began to tremble. Cracks spread across the surface of the demonic cocoon at an extremely fast speed. Yi Guchen's doppelganger was about to appear. Chapter 1103. At the same time, the dark fiend cocoon began to move. High in the sky, a black malefic star began to flicker. A strange mysterious power of the Star Palace descended from the void and fused into the dark demonic cocoon. As soon as the star force appeared, Su Qingyu immediately sensed it. A hint of surprise appeared on his face as he said, "Is this the power of a star chart?" The power of a star chart. Yi Guchen's expression changed slightly. Some peerless geniuses had birth charts that were compatible with the stars in the sky, and could use the power of the stars to cultivate. The Starry Sword Pavilion was an overlord force that was very good at using the power of the stars. The 7 great bears, including Gu Xiaoyang, could use the power of the stars to cultivate. Apart from that, Yi Guchen had also encountered Gu Zun, who had the 7-kill birth chart, and Princess Luoho who had the Luoho birth chart. However, Yi Guchen had never awakened the power of a birth chart. He had always thought he did not have a birth chart. However, it seemed like that was not the case. That black malefic star. Could it be the legendary Heavenly Calamity Lone Star? Su Qingyu's soul perception spread out. Through the secret chamber, he saw the dark star in the sky. Heavenly Calamity Lone Star? Yi Guchen was puzzled. The Heavenly Calamity Lone Star is also known as the Heavenly Calamity Lone Star. It's an extremely ominous malefic star. It's known as the Heavenly Calamity. Su Qingyu said solemnly as he looked at Yi Guchen. Your name is Yi Guchen, which has the word Guchen in it. It matches the Tiansha Guchen. Perhaps you have a stellar life providence, but it has yet to awaken. Now this power has been transferred to your avatar. Su Qingyu guessed. Is that so? Yi Guchen murmured inwardly. However, only he knew the reason he had not awakened the Heavenly Calamity Lone Star. The main reason was that his soul was the Sword Devil, Dugu Bai. Perhaps, Yi Guchen originally had a Heavenly Calamity life chart, but his soul was possessed by the Sword Devil. Therefore, he had yet to awaken his birth chart. And now, the birth of Yi Guchen's clone was equivalent to another Yi Guchen. That was why it attracted the power of the Heavenly Fiend Star. However, this might be a good thing for your doppelganger. Although the Lonesome Star is a malefic star, it can bring about a great increase in power, Su Qingyu murmured. Yi Guchen's eyes also lit up. He had the innate talent of the soul-devouring clan, the battle god fiend body, and the power of the heavenly ferocious birth chart. How powerful would his clone be in the end? At this moment, the surface of the dark demonic cocoon was covered with cracks. The entire demonic cocoon was pulsating like a heart. As for the Tiansha star in outer space, it was also faintly discernible. When a birth chart master was born, the other birth chart masters would sense it as well. Within a dark palace in the Mola dynasty, Princess Luoxian was regulating her breathing. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. Her figure flashed and landed on the roof of the palace. She looked up. Her cold and beautiful eyes under the half-mask stared at the flickering malefic star in outer space. Another birth chart master. It's the Tiansha star. Who could it be? Princess Luoxian murmured. On the other side of the South Horizon region, in a secret cultivation place, a scruffy-looking young man wielding the 7-kill ancient saber and swinging it tirelessly suddenly stopped. He raised his ordinary face and looked at the flickering black malefic star in outer space. The Tiansha star, the lonesome star. This young man was none other than Gu Zun. He muttered to himself. The name Tiansha star reminded him of a fated opponent. Unfortunately, he's already dead. He didn't die in my hands. Gu Zun's expression darkened as he swung his saber. Everyone in the South Horizon region could see the Tiansha star flashing. It was not only the birth chart masters who could sense it. Some powerful existences could sense it as well. However, they did not react. They only paid attention to it for a moment before dismissing it with a smile. Although birth chart masters were rare, it was not like there were none. Therefore, it did not attract the attention of these powerhouses. In a secret chamber in Sacred Cliff College, Yi Guqin, naturally, was unaware that the appearance of the Tiansha star had caused a commotion in the South Horizon region. At this moment, he was paying close attention to the Dark Demon Cocoon. The Tiansha star's power had completely fused with the Dark Demon Cocoon. Naturally, this did not mean the clone would be able to unleash the Tiansha star's full power. It was just that the Tiansha star's power had been transferred from Yi Guqin to his clone. Rumble. At this moment, a loud rumbling sound rang from the Dark Demon Cocoon. The sound was like thunder, but it also sounded like the explosion of the beginning of chaos. Senior Su, what's going on? Yi Guqin asked with concern. I'm afraid the result will be out soon. We'll know whether it's a success or a failure soon. Su Qingyu said solemnly. As soon as Su Qingyu finished speaking, the Dark Demon Cocoon exploded. The entire Dark Demonic Cocoon suddenly exploded. Billowing demonic chi swept out and instantly filled the entire secret chamber. A powerful shockwave shattered the walls of the secret chamber. On the ground, the ceiling formation lit up with a dazzling light. This secret chamber was the place where Great Elder Ime, Confuzi, and the others cultivated in seclusion. One could imagine how powerful the formation was. Even so, the secret chamber still shook violently under the impact of the fiend chi. In the billowing fiend chi, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Yi Guqin and Su Qingyu immediately looked over. A figure appeared and disappeared in the fiend chi. At the same time, a low and slightly hoarse voice could be heard. If I become a demon, I'll bring disaster to the bound of universe. If I become a king, the world will respect the emperor. Accompanied by a domineering and arrogant voice, a figure slowly appeared in front of Yi Guqin and Su Qingyu. The figure's face was almost identical to Yi Guqin's. It was as if they were cast from the same mold. The difference was that this clone's hair was as white as snow. His left eye was a normal black color, but his right eye was a dark golden color with blood-red patterns mixed in. It gave off an ancient and mysterious feeling. This is my clone? When he saw this clone, Yi Guqin also took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell. This feeling was very strange. It was as if he was looking at himself in a mirror. He could feel all of this clone's thoughts, personality, and emotions. It was as if it was another him. The only difference between the original body and the clone was their temperament. Yi Guqin's original temperament was calm, deep, and unperturbed. He had inherited the sword demon's calm temperament. However, although this clone's face was almost the same, it had a hint of evil charm. It was as if it was the real sword demon. It was domineering, arrogant, and evil. That could it be? When Su Qingyu saw the clone, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Senior Su, what's wrong? Yi Guqin asked. That dark gold eye, could it be the soul-devouring demon eye of the royal family of the soul-devouring clan? Su Qingyu's tone had a hint of surprise. Chapter 1104. Soul Eater Royal Family, Soul Eater Demon Eyes. What's that? Yi Guchen was puzzled. Actually, I'm not too sure either. I've only seen it in the Su family's library, Su Qingyu continued. Among the Soul Eater clan, the most powerful are the pure-blooded Soul Eater royal family. The symbol of the Soul Eater royal family is a pair of dark golden Soul Eater demon eyes, Su Qingyu said. Is Soul Eater Flame a member of the Soul Eater royal family? Yi Guchen was also slightly surprised. Su Qingyu nodded and said, that should be it. Fortunately, his physical body is sealed, and he can't use his Soul Eater demon eyes. Otherwise, even with your God Devourer sword, he would be doomed. But in that case, your doppelganger should be a half-blood Soul Eater royal family, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guchen thought for a while and agreed. In fact, from the first time he saw his doppelganger, he felt that this doppelganger had completely inherited Soul Eater Flame's talent. That head of white hair was the best proof, because Soul Eater Flame's sealed physical body was also full of white hair. However, Yi Guchen did not expect his doppelganger to inherit the talent of the Soul Eater royal family. Of course, because the doppelganger had only absorbed Soul Eater Flame's Soul Eater crystal. Only one of his eyes had turned into a Soul Eater demon eye. He was considered a half-blood Soul Eater royal family. What ability does the Soul Eater demon eye have? Yi Guchen could not help but be curious. I'm not too sure either. But since your doppelganger has manifested the Soul Eater demon eye, he will naturally slowly figure out its ability. But no matter what, the Soul Eater demon eye is definitely not inferior to a gifted superpower. It might even be more powerful than an ordinary gifted superpower, Su Qingyu judged. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. This doppelganger, regardless of anything else, was definitely comparable to a 7th grade Heaven's favorite with the Soul Eater demon eye alone. Original body. The doppelganger looked at Yi Guchen and said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. There was a strange connection between him and his clone. Even without speaking, they could understand each other's thoughts and share their thoughts. Let's give you a name. We can't just call you doppelganger, Yi Guchen thought for a moment then said. How about we call you Dugu Qioma? The name Dugu was taken from the surname of Dugu Wubai. The two words seek the devil indicated that this avatar was his demonized avatar. It was destined to rule over slaughter and seek the devil with a single thought. Dugu Qioma. What a great name. From now on I am Dugu Qioma. Dugu's devil-seeking eyes flashed with a cold light. His temperament was devilish, and his white hair fluttered in the wind. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. There was a hidden meaning behind the name. In the future, if Yi Guchen had the ability to fuse with his avatar, he would be able to do so. Dugu Wubai. Dugu begged the devil. The combination of the two was, Dugu begged to be defeated. Just as Yi Guchen named his avatar Dugu Qioma. Above the sky, dark clouds covered the entire South Horizon region. Everyone in the South Horizon region vaguely sensed it. Rumble. Hundreds of millions of thunderbolts rolled in the sky, like the roar of a thunder dragon. Then, an incomparably huge dark throne appeared in the void. On the dark throne, a pitch-black phantom of the Demon Emperor was sitting upright. The phantom of the Demon Emperor sat upright on the dark throne, appearing in the 9 heavens. It had a terrifying aura of a monarch descending to the world and demonizing all living things. For a moment, the entire South Horizon region could almost see the phantom of the Demon Emperor sitting cross-legged in the 9 heavens. Could that be a phenomenon in the sky? The Demon Emperor descends to the 9 heavens. This is the Demon Emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon, representing the birth of an unparalleled demon king. Not long ago, the lonesome star appeared, and now the Demon Emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon appeared. Could there be a connection between the two? How is that possible? If the lonesome star and the Demon Emperor descends to the 9 heavens were triggered by the same person, then it would be absolutely terrifying. Could it be that the demonic extermination sect hid a certain demon king prodigy, and only allowed him to enter the world now? Countless martial artists in the South Horizon region were discussing. Generally speaking, the appearance of a phenomenon represented the birth of some super monstrous genius. For example, Shui, Er's Heaven's Whale phenomenon represented her identity as the Heaven's Whale Witch. Also, when Di Haotian was born, Flowers fell from the sky and golden lotuses bloomed from the ground, which was a saint's phenomenon. And now, the appearance of the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon naturally represented the birth of a demon king prodigy. As for the demonic extermination sect that those people were talking about, it was one of the 3 major sects in the South Horizon region. The Heavenly God Sword sect, the Battle God Saber sect, and the Demonic Extermination sect. The Demonic Extermination sect was also an overlord-level force with a demon saint. At this moment, the group of experts from the Demonic Extermination sect were also shocked by the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. Even the powerful demon prodigies of the Demonic Extermination sect couldn't trigger the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. In the Demonic Extermination sect, a woman in a black dress stood on top of a mountain. Her face was covered with a black veil, revealing a pair of charming eyes. She was tall and perfect, with stunning curves, full breasts, and a perky butt. Her snow-white body was hidden under the black dress, and it was faintly discernible. It made one's blood boil and was exceptionally seductive. She was like a demon in the night, charming and enchanting. At this moment, the woman in the black dress lifted her chin and looked at the phenomenon in the sky. Her eyes were watery as she murmured, "The demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon has finally appeared." The Demonic Extermination sect's origin technique, the Demonic Extermination Heart Sutra, can only be cultivated to perfection by the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. Because no one has been able to cultivate the Demonic Extermination Heart Sutra to perfection, the Demonic Extermination sect has always been suppressed by the Heavenly God Sword sect and the Battle God Saber sect, as well as other forces. The demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon has appeared. Does it mean that the hope of reviving the Demonic Extermination sect has appeared? No matter who you are or where you are, one will definitely find you. The woman in the black dress bit her lips and smiled. Her watery eyes were full of intelligence and craftiness, like a peerless demon. If someone was here and saw the woman in the black dress, they would definitely recognize her. Because she was one of the most famous elites of the Demonic Extermination sect, Demonis 1, At the same time, in the Starfall Mountain where the Starry Sword Pavilion was located. In a pavilion, a young man was wearing a Big Dipper robe and a Mizar star crown. His face was handsome, and his eyes were like stars. It was Gu Xiaoyang. He frowned slightly and looked at the sky. First, the malefic star appeared. Then the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. What kind of monster has appeared? Gu Xiaoyang thought. He naturally wouldn't think of Yi Guchen. In his eyes, Yi Guchen was a small figure who had been dead for a long time. In the sky, the purple-winged bat dragon flapped its wings and soared into the sky. A handsome figure stood on the back of the bat dragon. His purple hair fluttered in the wind and he had a domineering aura. It was Huang Qianqiu, who had left the Sword Dynasty and was preparing to return to the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. His purple eyes looked at the Demon Emperor phenomenon in the sky, and a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. Looks like the upcoming battles between the elites are getting more and more interesting. However, the Demon Emperor and the Malefic Star have to bow before me. Huang Qianqiu. Huang Qianqiu's lips curled into a confident smile. He had the desolate sky body and his battle strength was extraordinary. He could even put up a fight against Di Haoyan. Therefore he wasn't afraid of the Demon Emperor. In a forbidden area of the Heavenly God Sword sect, a golden longsword covered in crystals floated in the middle of the array. There were a total of 10 types of special flames gathered in one place and burned the sealed longsword. At the same time, there was another golden longsword with a supreme aura that was also burning the outer shell of the sealed longsword. A figure sat at the side with his legs crossed. His long golden hair was dazzling and his silver eyes were extremely deep. His every move exuded the perfect aura of a celestial being, as if he was a deity. It was the Heavenly God Sword sect's clear sky true dragon, Di Haoyan. He raised his head and looked at the Demon Emperor descends to the 9 heavens that appeared in the sky. His lips curled into a faint smile and he shook his head. A mere demon is not worth mentioning. Chapter 1105. The Demon King's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon had shaken the entire Nantian region. Previously, when the heavenly demon Lone Star appeared, only a small number of people paid attention to it. However, when the Demon King's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon appeared, almost the entire Nantian region noticed it. Many people suspected that the heavenly demon Lone Star and the phenomenon might have been caused by the same person. However, there were more people who were doubtful. Regardless of whether it was the heavenly demon Fate or the Demon King's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon, as long as anyone had one of them, he or she would be considered a genius. If both situations were caused by the same person, it would be too terrifying. Just as the people in the Nantian region were discussing it. In a mysterious space, a middle-aged man in plain cotton clothes sat in the void with his legs crossed. He had a handsome face, and his eyes were pure black like a bottomless abyss. They were dark and deep, and it was extremely terrifying. I felt it. That aura is the other half of my pure demon body. The handsome middle-aged man muttered to himself with a hoarse voice. In the next moment he covered his forehead with one hand, and a look of confusion and struggle flashed across his dark eyes. Vaguely he muttered a sentence. "Your disciple is not dead yet." This figure was none other than Feng Manlu, who was possessed by Jitian. Feng Manlu's handsome face kept changing expressions, and in the end, it turned into a strange and eerie coldness. No matter if it is the other half of the pure demon body or the God Devourer sword, I will get them both. When the time comes, the name of the Demon Sword Emperor, Feng Jitian, will shake the entire Nantian region. Feng Manlu laughed loudly, and his black hair danced in the wind. Billowing demon chi accompanied by a shocking sword essence swept out in all directions, and the fluctuations were extremely terrifying. The entire void around him instantly shattered, and endless cracks spread across the void. Not long after, the Demon King's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon finally dissipated. However, there were still countless cultivators in the Nantian region discussing it. It was obvious that everyone was very curious about which peerless genius had caused such a phenomenon. At that moment, in the secret chamber of Sacred Cliff College, Yi Guchen also noticed the commotion outside. "I didn't expect your clone to be able to cause the Demon King's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon." Su Qingyu had obviously sensed the anomaly in the sky outside. Even Su Qingyu, a saint, could not help but sigh. What kind of monster had he created? I didn't expect to be augmented by a phenomenon as well. Yi Guchen sighed. Up until now he had only seen two people with phenomenons. They were Di Haotian and Xue Er. Yi Guchen himself had once caused the phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky and golden lotuses surging from the ground. But that was achieved with the help of Mount Saint crossing, which meant that he had the potential to become a saint. However, Senior Su Duguchioma's aura. Yi Guchen looked at Duguchioma and frowned slightly. Duguchio had a head full of white hair. His right eye was a dark gold soul-devouring demon eye. His entire person looked devilishly charming. However, his aura was only at the body refinement realm. This caused Yi Guchen to be puzzled. The body refining realm was one of the four initial stages of cultivation: body forging, profound chi refining, and spirit. The hidden latch of life and death, and the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. After that was the divine dwelling realm. Although Duguchioma's aura was terrifying, his cultivation level was obviously a little shocking. This is normal. It's almost impossible for you to refine a clone to be at the same cultivation level as your original body. For example, if a saint refines a clone, wouldn't he be able to create another saint? Su Qingyu explained. When Yi Guchen heard this, he suddenly understood and nodded slightly. Indeed, it was a little unrealistic to refine a clone to be at the same cultivation level as the original body. However, you don't have to worry about this. Duguchioma's cultivation speed is very fast. With the Khanate Purple Chi, it won't take long for him to catch up to your cultivation level, and even surpass it. Su Qingyu smiled faintly. Oh right, there's also the Khanate Purple Chi. Yi Guchen had forgotten about this. The Khanate Purple Chi was a special ability of 7th grade prodigies. It was known as a cultivation accelerator. Its previous owner, Zidonglai, also relied on this purple qi to cultivate faster than ordinary people. If Dugu Qiumo refined this connate purple qi, his cultivation speed would increase again. Qiuma, you can refine this connate purple qi. Yi Guqin handed the connate purple qi to Dugu Qiuma. Okay. Dugu Qiuma nodded slightly, then opened his mouth and directly swallowed the connate purple qi into his stomach. In the blink of an eye, he had refined the connate purple qi. So fast. Yi Guqin was surprised. After all, his body is the pure demon body formed by the God Devourer sword. It naturally has a part of the devouring power, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin exhaled a deep breath. His spirits were lifted. Dugu Qiuma had the celestial demon body, the connate purple qi, the soul-devouring demon eye, the heavenly demon fate chart, and the demon king descends to the 9th heaven. With these 5 talents, he was simply a freak of nature. Now you can give the God Devourer sword to him. It can be transported between the two of you, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin nodded and took out the God Devourer sword. When he held the God Devourer sword in the past, the demonic intent of the sword would erode his will. But now, that demonic intent obviously had no effect on him. Although it had no effect on him, it was still suitable to give the God Devourer sword to Dugu Qiuma. Dugu Qiuma took the God Devourer sword. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil sneer. This sword is suitable for slaughter. Then, Dugu Qiuma brushed the sword with one hand. The entire God Devourer sword was covered with a layer of black crystals. With this layer of black crystals, no one could see through the God Devourer sword. Even supremacies and sages would not be able to sense the immemorial demon sword's aura if they did not check carefully. As expected, the doppelganger seems to be able to control the God Devourer sword better. Yi Guqin thought to himself when he saw this. But on second thought, Dugu Qiuma's physical body was a pure demon body formed by Ji Tian using the God Devourer sword. It was reasonable for it to be compatible with the God Devourer sword. But as long as the doppelganger could control it, Yi Guqin would naturally be able to control it as well. Oh right, if you have the chance in the future, you might want to get in touch with the demonic sect of destruction, Su Qingyu suddenly said. Demonic sect of destruction? Why? Yi Guqin asked. The demonic sect of destruction was one of the 3 major sects in the Nantian region. Although it was suppressed by many forces and kept a low profile, there was no doubt that it had a strong foundation, and was still an overlord force. Yi Guqin had also heard about it. When the founder of the demonic sect of destruction, the world devastator demon Venerable, was born, it also caused the demon emperor to descend to the 9 heavens. The demonic heart sutra that he created is very suitable for your doppelganger to cultivate, Su Qingyu explained. I see, Yi Guqin said. But the demonic heart sutra was the core cultivation method of the demonic sect of destruction. It would definitely not be taught to outsiders. Yi Guqin kept this matter in his heart. He probably would not have the time to do it in the short term. Because next, other than dealing with the possible calamity of the Sword Dynasty, he still had to think of a way to save the Sword Alliance Master, Proud Divine Prefecture, and rebuild his spiritual abode. Then he would face the most important battle of the prodigies. Chapter 1106. Qiuemo, what do you plan to do next? Yi Guqin asked. Although he and his clone were telepathically connected, but he always felt that if he spoke he would get used to it. Main body, I want to go somewhere. Dugu Qiumo's eyes flickered with a faint cold light. Where? Yi Guqin asked. Yi Guqin was not surprised by Dugu Qiumo's choice. Dugu Qiumo was only in the body refining realm now. Staying by his side would limit his development instead. Moreover, although Dugu Qiumo was Yi Guqin's clone, he also had the ability to test himself independently. It was as if another Yi Guqin was thinking. Of course, Dugu Qiumo's thinking was absolutely subservient to Yi Guqin's main body. But if there was no need, Yi Guqin would not interfere with the growth of his clone. The path I walk is a path of slaughter. The environment of the Sword Dynasty is indeed not suitable for my growth. Instead, another dynasty is most suitable for me. Yi Guqin looked at Dugu Qiumo. The two opened their mouths almost in unison. Mola Dynasty. Ha, I really understand me, Duguqiuemo said. Then go, but be careful, Yi Guchen said. Don't worry, with the God Devourer sword, I can devour the enemy's flesh and essence to grow. Unless I'm completely destroyed and crushed into powder, it's very difficult for me to die, Duguqiuemo said. Yi Guchen nodded. If Duguqiuemo was in danger, he would be the first to detect it. Then he looked at Su Qingyu and said, Senior Su, there are still 2 soul source crystals left. They should be of some help to your primordial spirit recovery. Indeed, but during the period when I absorb and refine the 2 soul source crystals, I may fall into a deep sleep. At that time, everything will depend on you. Su Qingyu did not decline and said, Senior Su has already helped this Yi Guchen enough. Senior can rest in peace and recover, said Yi Guchen. Su Qingyu nodded, and placed the remaining 2 saints' soul source crystals into his body. After that, his nascent spirit lay down in the soul-storing coffin once more, and began to recover in a deep sleep. 2 saint crystals could not restore Su Qingyu's primordial spirit to its peak state, but it could at least restore some of his strength. After everything was settled, Yi Guchen finally heaved a sigh of relief. After that, Yi Guchen opened the secret chamber, and Dugu and Qiuma also came out in a flash. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, appeared as usual. He discovered that the entire academy was filled with discussions. The appearance of the Lone Star, and the appearance of the Demon King ascending to the 9 heavens. I wonder which peerless monster has appeared. Sigh, I wonder if that unparalleled Demon King will show up at the battlefield of prodigies this time. If Senior Brother Dugu's spiritual dwelling had not been broken, he would definitely not be weaker than that unparalleled Demon King given his identity as a saint. The disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy were all discussing the abnormal phenomenon from before. Many people talked and the topic fell on Yi Guchen. This time, I seem to have heard that there are people in the Sword Dao Alliance who oppose Senior Brother Dugu becoming the Sword Son. This is too much. Everyone knows about Senior Brother Dugu's performance in the Sacred Dynasty treasure. Even Hua Wuxia of the Hua family was killed by Senior Brother Dugu. Some disciples discussed and were filled with righteous indignation. Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a strange look when he heard this, but he did not feel anything, because he knew that Etienne would at least give him the position of Sword Son. In the next few days, Yi Guchen had been in seclusion to nurture his sea of consciousness. After all, 1/3 of his sea of consciousness origin was given to Duguqiuema. On the other side, on a mountain range at the border of the Sword Dynasty, Duguqiuema stood at the top. He was dressed in a black robe, and his white hair was 3,000 feet long. His dark golden right eye was deep and demonic. His entire body was emitting an evil aura. Suddenly, the muscles on his face moved slightly, and his entire face was slightly different from Yi Guchen's. Because in the Sacred Dynasty treasure, many of the Molo Dynasty's geniuses had seen Yi Guchen. Duguqiuema and Yi Guchen looked the same, so he needed to slightly change his appearance. Duguqiuema's physical body was originally molded, so he could easily change his appearance without relying on external objects. After Duguqiuema changed his appearance, he looked even more handsome and demonic. The dark golden soul-devouring demon, I had a demonic charm. Not only did I inherit the talent of the soul-devouring clan, but I also perfectly inherited all the moves of Hunmia Yen, including the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth. In addition, after completely controlling the God-devouring sword, I also explored the signature swordsmanship left by the Demon Sword Emperor Jitian, the Demon 13 Swords. But I, Duguqiuema, will not be limited by the shackles of my predecessors. I will eventually create a swordsmanship that belongs to me, Duguqiuema. Duguqiuema's personality was very different from Yi Guchen's, leaning towards the dark and demonic side. But his heart of swordsmanship was exactly the same. He had the soul-devouring clan's Hunmia Yen, and the Demon Sword Emperor Jitian's ultimate techniques, but he still had the ambition to create his own swordsmanship martial art. Duguqiuema looked in the direction of the Molo dynasty, and a bloodthirsty coldness flashed in his eyes. Killing 1 is a sin, killing 10,000 is a hero, killing 9 million is a hero. I, Duguqiuema, will start my path of killing in the Molo dynasty. Gu Xiaoyang, Huang Qianqiu Di Haoyin, none of you can escape. Dugu Chioma stomped his foot, and with a loud bang, the entire mountain range collapsed. His figure turned into a black shadow and swept toward the Molo dynasty. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. In this month, the chaos in the Sword dynasty, under the control of Heavenly Love and the others, was finally completely suppressed. The entire Sword dynasty had preliminarily restored order. But as long as one had the slightest ability to judge the situation, one would understand. The situation in the Sword dynasty could be said to be a storm, and the 5 fake saint aristocratic families would not let it go so easily. What Heavenly Love and the Sword Dao Alliance faced next was the revenge of the 5 aristocratic families. On this day, Yi Guqin, who was in seclusion, was suddenly called out by Xuanlian. "Brother Xuanlian, what's the matter?" Yi Guqin asked. "The first elder ordered us to go to the Sword Emperor Ridge," Xuanlian said. "Is the Sword Sun conferment ceremony going to be held?" Yi Guqin asked. "It should be, but there may be other news," Xuanlian said. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. It was not that he coveted the position of Sword Sun. It was to obtain the qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. But there may be some criticism in the Sword Dao Alliance about Brother Dugu becoming the Sword Sun. Xuanlian frowned. "I believe Sword King can settle everything," Yi Guqin said with a smile. Perhaps in the eyes of those opponents, he was a prodigy with a broken divine dwelling, and was no longer qualified to be the Sword Sun. After all, no matter how weak the Sword dynasty was now, it still held the title of the First Dynasty. One could imagine if the Sword Sun of the First Dynasty was a cripple with a broken divine dwelling. If word got out, how much criticism would the Sword dynasty attract? Even if he participated in the battlefield of prodigies, it would only attract the ridicule of other forces and dynasties. Chapter 1107. A few days later, the news of the Sword Emperor City's Sword Sun conferment ceremony had spread throughout the Sword dynasty. Although the Sword dynasty's internal strife had been quelled, the threat was still there. The 5 aristocratic families were still a huge threat. Heavenly Love had chosen to hold the Sword Sun conferment ceremony, now to calm the people of the Sword dynasty. As the news of the Sword Sun conferment ceremony spread, naturally, the thing that attracted the most discussion was who would become the 13th swordsman. Among the 13 Sword Sons, the most talked about was Jiankui, who would become Jiankui. As the aristocratic families left, the geniuses of the aristocratic families could not join in the fight. As for the geniuses of Heavenly Saint, Sun Moon, and Long River, it was impossible for them to become Sword Sons. After such a selection, the geniuses of Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College had a higher chance of becoming Sword Sun. Of course, the most talked about one was Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's legend in the Sword dynasty was needless to say. His performance in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure was even more eye-catching. Wuxia had died in Yi Guqin's hands. What was even more shocking was that Yi Guqin had the ability to exchange blows with Huang Qianqiu. Although Huang Qianqiu had broken his spiritual dwelling in the end, Yi Guqin's stunning performance could not be overshadowed. Huang Qianqiu was a supreme genius. Even the geniuses of the overlords would not have a good ending if they fought against him. Yi Guqin could only be considered a first-tier genius in the Sword dynasty. Such a result was extremely shocking. If Yi Guqin's spiritual dwelling had not been broken, Jiankui's position would not have been discussed at all, because the result would have been obvious. But now, the news of Yi Guqin's spiritual dwelling being broken had spread everywhere. Almost all the dynasties knew that the natural saint of the Sword dynasty, Dugu Wubai, had his spiritual dwelling broken, and his genius halo dimmed. In that case, Jiankui's position would not be a problem. Even the position of Sword Sun would not be given to Yi Guqin, because no dynasty would allow a cripple to represent the dynasty in the Battle of the Geniuses. A few days later, the remaining geniuses of the Sword dynasty gathered in the Sword Emperor City. A large group of martial artists also entered the city Sword Emperor City to witness the sword conferment ceremony. Yi Guqin and the other geniuses from the Divine Cliff Academy naturally rushed to the Sword dynasty. Mu Xingzu, Suki Miyazaki, and the rest of the Sword Sun of the Sword dynasty. After Yi Guchen and the others entered the Sword Emperor city, they found an inn to stay in for the time being. Not long after Lin sword sun sword and sword. Brother Dugu, you guys are finally here. Jian Jinghong smiled as he walked over. Sword was sword of. You are. Yi Guchen looked a little puzzled. Haha, Brother Dugu, have you forgotten us so quickly? Among the three young men, a handsome young man with hair tied up by a jade crown laughed. Yi Guchen immediately reacted when he heard the voice. Brother Kinpo? Aha, that's right. I thought Brother Dugu wouldn't recognize me after I took off my mask. Kinpo shook his head and laughed. Yi Guchen instantly understood. The Sword Sun conferment ceremony was imminent. Kinpo and the other Sword Sons of the previous generation had temporarily taken off their masks. Of course, with Kinpo's harvest in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove, there was no doubt that he would regain the position of Sword Sun. Since I'm no longer the Sword Sun, it's not appropriate to call me Kinpo. My real name is Su Ziheo, said. Brother Su. Yi Guchen cupped his fist slightly. As for the two young men beside him, they were naturally Jian Wu and Sword 7. The two of them had also told Yi Guchen their real names. One was called Yushan, while the other was called Xiaojun. Brother Dugu, you might have to bear a lot of pressure and criticism during the Sword Sun conferment ceremony, Su Ziheo said softly. He naturally felt indignant for Yi Guchen. I believe Sword King will make a wise decision. Yi Guchen wasn't worried. He didn't care about the criticism, as long as the result was good. Another day passed, and the day of the Sword Sun conferment ceremony finally arrived. It was held in the palace at the center of the Sword Sovereign City. It was also the base of the Sword Dao Alliance. It could be said that the Sword Dao Alliance was the core of the entire Sword Dynasty. Yi Guchen and the others, under the lead of Sacred Cliff College's Great Elder Yi Mei, arrived at the Sword Sovereign Palace at the center of the palace complex. At this moment, there was a sea of people outside the Sword Sovereign Palace. As far as the eye could see, there was a black mass of heads. And in front, there was a group of venerables with extraordinary auras sitting upright. There were more than 100 of them. These experts were more than 100 lords who were loyal to the Sword Dao Alliance. More than 200 of the 360 lords of the Sword Dynasty had left with the 5 aristocratic families. Of the remaining 150, only 100 stood firmly on the side of the rogue cultivators. The remaining 50 or so did not come to participate in the conferment ceremony. Among this group of lords, there was someone Yi Guchen recognized. It was the Skywind Lord Qin Zhen. However, Qin Zhen's expression didn't look too good. He looked at Yi Guchen with a hint of worry. Yi Guchen's rise in the Sword Dynasty started from the Skywind Ridge, so Qin Zhen naturally looked at Yi Guchen in a new light. However, Yi Guchen would probably be in a lot of trouble today. Seeing Yi Guchen's arrival, the surroundings became even noisier. However, no one dared to say anything presumptuous to Yi Guchen. At this moment, a group of more than 10 people walked out from the Sword Sovereign Palace. The one walking in the center was naturally I Ching. Confuzi and Wu Hongyan were among the 10 people. The rest of the people, whether in terms of aura or pressure, were not inferior to Confuzi and Wu Hongyan by much. Obviously, these 10 people were the Sword Dao Alliance's top fighting force, more than 10 pseudo-saint experts. Greetings, Deputy Alliance Leader Lords. As soon as I Ching and the others walked out, the entire Sword Sovereign Palace was filled with cheers. It could be said that if it weren't for I Ching's powerful methods, the chaos in the Sword Dynasty wouldn't have been quelled so quickly. Everyone, please dispense with the formalities. I'm sure you're all aware that we're here for the Sword Sun conferment ceremony. Although there were some accidents in the expedition to the Sacred Dynasty's hidden treasure, the Sword Sun contest still counts. After tallying the gains of all the Sky Prides, we've decided on the candidates for this year's 13 Sword Suns. Next, we'll announce the results. I Ching did things without the slightest hesitation. Next, we'll announce that the successor to Jian Shirsan's position is. I Ching said. Yi Guchen, Jian Jinghong, Su Ziheo, and the others had complicated expressions on their faces when they heard this. Jian Shisan had killed himself in front of them. Yi Guqin and the others didn't even know what Jian Shisan's real name was. His real name, like his face, was forever hidden under the grimace mask. However, when Yiqing announced Jian Shisan's successor, Yi Guqin was a little surprised. Chapter 1108. The successor of Jian Shisan is Kong Kong, Yi Tianqing said indifferently. Once these words were spoken, everyone looked at each other in dismay, because compared to Yi Guqin, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and other famous heavens prides, Kong Kong was well known. Not many people knew about Kong Kong. His fame was limited to the Divine Cliff Academy. Moreover, it was a notorious reputation. For example, he had stolen some beautiful senior sister's undergarment, and so on. Among the Sacred Cliff College crowd, Kong Kong scratched his head and stood up with an embarrassed look. What? Don't tell me that this little monk is Kong Kong. How old is he? How can he be the Sword Son? That's not right. This little monk is actually at the Divine Dwelling stage. My God, how old is he? When they saw Kong Kong walk out, the warriors present were first stunned and instinctively showed doubts. But after sensing Kong Kong's aura, the doubts in their eyes instantly turned to surprise. A little monk who was not more than 12 years old had the cultivation of the Divine Dwelling stage. This kind of strength was indeed monstrous. Although Yi Guqin was a little surprised, he could understand. After all, Kong Kong came from the Western Brilliance domain and was the 9th-generation Sword Buddha. He had a mysterious special constitution. Even Xuanlian, who was also the 9th-generation Sword Buddha, chose to protect Kong Kong. It was clear that Kong Kong definitely had some kind of background. After knowing that Kong Kong was at the Divine Dwelling stage, the noise in the audience also subsided. Such monstrous talent was indeed qualified to be the Sword Son. Then, Yi Tianqing continued to announce the winner of the Sword Son. The successor of the 12th sword position, Ling Mayin. When these words came out, it set off another round of discussion. Another heaven's pride of Sacred Cliff College. It seems that it's because the heaven's prides of the aristocratic families were excluded, some lords commented. At this moment, Ling Moyin's beautiful face revealed a faint smile. Her brother had regained his strength, and the culprit, Wuxia, had been killed by Yi Guqin. Ling Moyin's heart had been completely undone. She was no longer cold and indifferent, and had returned to her previous gentle and amiable self. Yi Guqin was not surprised that Ling Moyin could become the Sword Son. Only Ling Moyin, Kong Kong, and the others had a chance to be selected. However, luck was sometimes very important. The successor to Jian Shi's position, Meng Charan, Heavenly Love, said again. Everyone's gaze suddenly shifted to Tianxian College's side, landing on a young girl in a light blue dress. Her features were picturesque, and her skin was as fair as jade. Meng Charan was the pride of Tianxian College. She was slightly weaker than Mu Xingzu and Suki Miyazaki, but she wasn't weak either. Most importantly, she was the granddaughter of a rogue cultivator of the Sword Dao Alliance. Hearing that Meng Charan had become the Sword Son, an old man with white eyebrows beside Heavenly Love smiled. His name was Meng Zhen, and he was a rogue cultivator of the Rogue Cultivator Camp. Meng Charan was his granddaughter. Meng Zhen was all smiles. What he was most proud of was this granddaughter of his, as well as his other disciple. Next, Heavenly Love announced the successor to Sword 10. It was Suki Miyazaki from Tianxian College. This didn't cause much of a stir. Suki Miyazaki was originally ranked 8th on the sword ranking. Even if the prodigies of the aristocratic families weren't excluded, Suki Miyazaki still had a chance to compete for the Sword Son position. Then, the successors to Sword 8 and Kempo were Yushan and Xiaojun. They were the Sword Sons of the Rogue Cultivator Camp. One was Jianwu, and the other was Sword 7. This time their Sword Sons ranking was a little lower, but to the two of them, it didn't really matter. The successor to Sword 7 is Mu Xingzu from Tianxian College, Heavenly Love announced. Mu Xingzu's selection stirred up a lot of discussion. The reason was simple. She was Yi Guqin's disciple. Just as the entire scene began to clamor, Wu Hongyan directly took a step forward. Her snow-white jade-like hands were clenched into fists, and a foxy and dangerous smile appeared on her face as she said, "My Goddess Academy's disciple has been chosen as the sword child." Hearing Wu Hongyan's threatening words, the noisy crowd immediately quieted down. Seeing this, Wu Hongyan snorted charmingly and returned to her original position. Most of the discussion about Mu Xingzu came from Yi Guqin. But only Yi Guqin knew that Mu Xingzu had the ability to become the sword son. Heavenly Love shook her head and smiled at Wu Hongyan, then continued to announce. The successor to Sword 6 is Su Zihao. Su Zihao was Kempo from before. This time, he also successfully became the sword son and advanced 3 places. No one objected to Su Zihao becoming Sword 6. They thought it was natural. Next, the successor to Jian Wu's position is Ling Emoshu from Sacred Cliff College, Heavenly Love announced. Hearing those words, everyone's gazes carried complicated emotions as they looked towards the one-armed black-clothed youth within the Divine Cliff Academy. Ling Emoshu's experience was legendary. He was once ranked 10th on the sword ranking and a disciple of the Holy Emblem, but he was beaten into the abyss by Wuxia. Who would have thought that Ling Emoshu could transform his spiritual abode and recultivate the sword in his left hand and rise again? Many people respected Ling Emoshu. Jian Wu's identity was well-deserved. After the announcement of Jian Wu's candidate, the atmosphere suddenly became a little tense, because there were only 4 places left, including Jiankui. Many of the geniuses present also had a hunch that they would not be chosen. However, they were also very curious about who could win the remaining 4 Sword Son positions. Heavenly Love looked around at the crowd and announced calmly, "The successor to Sword 4 is Luoyu." As soon as she said that, the whole place fell silent again. Some people's eyes were filled with doubts and even more puzzlement. Who was Luoyu? Many people had never heard of this name. In the crowd, a handsome young man in a blue shirt stepped out. When they saw this figure, some people suddenly exclaimed, "This person is so familiar. It seems to be Sword 2? Isn't Sword 2 the sword son of the aristocratic family? You're too uninformed. Didn't you say that Luoyu is a spy from the itinerant cultivator camp and has been hiding among the aristocratic family's sword sons?" Another person said. "I see." Everyone suddenly understood. But then they looked puzzled. Luoyu's previous identity as Sword 2 was definitely not weak, and he had been hiding in the aristocratic family camp for a long time. It could be said that his contributions were not negligible, but he was only ranked 4th? How is that possible? Brother Luoyu is only ranked 4th? A surprised shout sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that the person who spoke was Meng Charan. Hearing her words, many people also looked puzzled. Meng Charan was very intimate with Luoyu. Why is Luoyu only ranked 4th? Meng Charan's grandfather Meng Zhen also questioned. It seems that Elder Meng has some relationship with Luoyu, some people guessed. Elder Meng, although Luoyu is your disciple, you can't be so biased. Heavenly Love smiled faintly. What I see. Many people suddenly understood. Luoyu was a disciple that Meng Zhen had secretly nurtured, and later became a spy in the aristocratic family camp. The reason why Meng Charan and Luoyu were so close was precisely because they had cultivated together since they were young. Naturally, their relationship was not ordinary. In this way, everyone thought it through. Luoyu had been a spy in the aristocratic family for a long time. Even if he did not contribute much, he still worked hard. With his strength and contributions, he could even compete for the position of Jiankui. But now, not only did he not keep his position as Sword 2, but he also fell 2 places and became Sword 4. This was something that Meng Zhen and Meng Charan did not expect. Chapter 1109. Not to mention the others, even Luoyu himself frowned slightly. He did not expect that he would be arranged in such a way that his ranking would drop instead of rising. Not only had he been hiding in the aristocratic families for a long time, but he had also brought out many secrets. In the Sacred Dynasty's treasure, he had even killed a few sword sons from the aristocratic families. With such contributions, coupled with his own strength and status, he was even qualified to fight for the position of Jiankui, let alone keep his position as Sword 2. But now he had to settle for 4th place. This is unfair to Brother Luoyu. Meng Charan frowned and could not help but shout. Deputy Alliance Leader E, your arrangement. Meng Zhen frowned and seemed to want to say something. This is according to the rules of the Battle of the Sword Sons. There is no favoritism, Yi Tianqing said. Hearing Yi Tianqing's words, everyone, including the hundreds of overlords, nodded slightly. Yi Tianqing's character, needless to say, was obvious to all. Otherwise, these overlords would not have stayed in the Sword Dynasty so loyally. All right, then this old man will see who exactly the first three people are. They are actually more outstanding than my disciple. Meng Zhen stepped back in the end. However, from his tone, it was clear that there was some dissatisfaction. Meng Charan was the same. She muttered. I want to see who the three are more outstanding than Brother Luoyu. Meng Charan had cultivated with Luoyu since they were young, so she admired Luoyu. In her opinion, Luoyu was the most outstanding man in the world. Yi Tianqing ignored Meng Zhen and the rest and continued. The successor of Sword 3 Xuanlian. Hearing Xuanlian's name, the crowd did not comment much. Xuanlian was already famous in the Sword Dynasty. Before Yi Guqin came to Sacred Cliff College, the entire younger generation of Sacred Cliff College relied on Xuanlian. Xuanlian was fourth on the sword leaderboard. Excluding Huang Qianqiu, he was actually third on the sword leaderboard. Even Luoyu, who was once Sword 2, could not guarantee that he could defeat Xuanlian. Therefore Luoyu did not say anything. As for Meng Zhen, he snorted and said, My disciple is no weaker than the Xuanlian. Although he said so, he did not say that Luoyu was stronger than Xuanlian. This Xuanlian's strength is barely on par with Brother Luoyu's. Meng Charan snorted. Next, it was time to announce the successor of Jian Tu. Many people's gazes shifted back and forth between Jian Jinghong and Yi Guqin. If nothing unexpected happens, the position of Sword Chief should belong to Jian Jinghong. I think so too. After all, Jian Jinghong is Vice Alliance Master Yi's disciple. It's a pity for Duguwu Bai. His divine dwellings have been destroyed. Even if he is forced to take the position of Sword 2, I'm afraid it will still attract a lot of criticism, some warriors whispered to each other. However, in the end, Yi Tianqing's words caused everyone to be stunned. The successor of Sword 2, Jian Jinghong. What? Did I hear wrong? Jian Jinghong? It's really Jian Jinghong. He's only ranked second? Could the first place be? No, it shouldn't be. Yi Tianqing's words were like a pot of boiling water. Not only was Jian Jinghong's strength extraordinary, but he also possessed the creation sword essence, and was Yi Tianqing's disciple. Logically speaking, he should be worthy of being Jian Kuei's successor. As for Yi Guqin, before his divine dwellings had been destroyed, he might have been able to compete with Jian Jinghong for the position of Jian Kuei. But now there was almost no possibility. However, the result was so unexpected. Jian Jinghong shrugged, and did not hold any grudges in his heart. Jian Jinghong is not bad, but I'm curious. Who will take the position of Jian Kuei? Meng Zhen said. In his imagination, the Jian Kuei's successor should be either Jian Jinghong or Luoyu. However, the two of them actually failed to obtain it. As for Yi Guqin, Meng Zhen had already excluded him from the list of candidates for Jian Kuei. I also want to see who took Brother Luoyu's position as Jian Kuei's successor. Meng Charan crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her words made it seem as if the Jian Kuei's successor had long been Luoyu's. Next, we will announce Jian Yi, who is also the Jian Kuei's successor. Yi Tianqing's tone became slightly more solemn. After all, the position of Jian Kuei was equivalent to that of a country's crown prince. It was definitely not ordinary. Many eyes fell on Yi Guqin. They wanted to know if Yi Tianqing had the courage to push a cripple with a broken divine dwelling to the throne of Jian Kuei. The gazes of the surrounding people were filled with pity, indifference and all sorts of emotions and so on. Yi Guqin directly ignored them. The broken divine dwelling was only temporary. If there was an opportunity, he would metamorphose into a more powerful flawless divine dwelling. The Jian Kuei's successor is Duguwu Bai. Yi Tianqing's words were sonorous. The atmosphere was silent for a moment. Then it boiled and exploded like a pot of oil in water. I didn't expect it to be Duguwu Bai. This is really unexpected. But is it really appropriate to nominate someone with a broken divine dwelling? I really admire Duguwubai, but this is not the reason why he can ascend to the position of Jiankui. Discussions broke out instantly, and most of the comments were extremely unfavorable to Yi Guqin. The reason was simple. It was because of his strength. Yi Guqin was still the original natural saint, so no one said anything. But Yi Guqin's divine dwelling had been broken by Huang Qianxiu. This had a huge impact. The Sword Dynasty was still the #1 dynasty in the 100 Great Dynasties. If a cripple ascended to the position of Jiankui, it would undoubtedly attract a lot of criticism. Deputy Alliance Leader, is this your decision? Meng Zhen asked. He could accept it if Jian Jinghong was the Jiankui, because Luo Yu was indeed slightly weaker than Jian Jinghong. But if his disciple could not even compare to a cripple with a broken divine dwelling, he would be furious. Meng Charan also felt that it was unfair for Luo Yu. She walked to Yi Guqin, sized him up, and said, Duguwubai, I have indeed heard of your name. I also know that your talent and strength were not weak in the past. You were even known as a natural saint. But the past is the past. One can't always remember the glory of the past, right? Your divine dwelling has been broken by Huang Qianxiu, and you can no longer improve. Instead of forcing yourself to take the position of Jiankui and humiliating yourself, why don't you abdicate? That way you can still have an ordinary and stable life. Meng Charan's voice was very calm, and she did not deliberately show any disdain. However, that judgmental tone made people feel extremely uncomfortable listening to it. Mu Xingzu's eyes widened and she shouted, Meng Charan, how dare you be impudent to my master? Ling Emoshu also frowned. He took a step forward and said coldly, watch your tone when speaking to Brother Dugu. The two of them took a step forward at the same time, and their aura forced Meng Charan to take a few steps back. Her face was slightly pale, but she immediately said firmly, what, did I say something wrong? Isn't it natural for the weak to abdicate and the strong to succeed? Meng Charan still felt that her words were the most reasonable. Yi Guqin revealed a cold look when he heard that. He took a step forward and looked at Meng Charan with a pair of bottomless black eyes. Who gave you the right to judge my future? Chapter 11:10. Yi Guqin's words were indifferent, and did not reveal the slightest bit of aura. But those deep, cold eyes made Meng Charan's heart tremble for no reason. It was as if she was facing endless darkness and fear. Her legs gave way, and she sat on the ground with a thud. Luo Yu saw this and walked over to help Meng Charan up. Charan, are you alright? Meng Charan's beautiful face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. Her grandfather was a false saint expert. She herself was also a proud daughter of Goddess Academy whose reputation wasn't weak. That was why Meng Charan had developed a somewhat egotistical personality. At this moment, she was suppressed by Yi Guqin's aura and slumped to the ground in public. This was very embarrassing for Meng Charan. Duguwubai, I've heard of your deeds and admire you, but isn't it a little inappropriate to treat a girl like this? Luo Yu frowned. His attitude toward Yi Guqin was not too excessive, but as childhood sweethearts, he naturally sided with Meng Charan. Was it me or her who started it first? Yi Guqin said indifferently. These words made Meng Charan's expression turn ugly again. She said angrily, Duguwubai, I used to admire you, but today I realize that you're just a greedy, vile person. Meng Charan's words determined that Yi Guqin was a vile person who coveted Jiankui's position. Yi Guqin shook his head and said nothing. If it weren't for the prodigy battlefield, Yi Guqin wouldn't have been interested in Jiankui's position. Leader Yi, shouldn't we change the candidate for Jiankui? Meng Zhen walked out with a sullen face. Seeing his granddaughter lying on the ground and his disciple occupying Sword Force position, he was naturally very unhappy. What made Meng Zhen even more unhappy was that the person who took away his disciple's position as Jiankui was a cripple with a broken spiritual abode. Even though he had created many legends, and was even titled as a natural-born saint. But as Meng Charan said, the past was the past. Yi Guqin had lost his value. I am following the rules of the Sword Sun battle. Why do I have to change? Heaven Sentiment asked. Meng Zhen coldly snorted and said, "The reason is very simple. How will the other dynasties view our sword dynasty if we let a cripple with a destroyed spiritual abode take up the position of Jiankui? Will this move convince the prodigies?" He looked at the prodigies present and said loudly, "Are you willing to let a cripple take the most glorious position of Jiankui?" None of the geniuses present said anything after hearing this. However, the eyes of most of the sky prides flickered slightly. Obviously, they were not too willing to let Yi Guqin take on the role of Jiankui. Have you all forgotten the miracle created by senior brother Dugu? Also, senior brother Dugu killed Hua Wuxia single-handedly in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. The disciples of Sacred Cliff College roared with righteous indignation. So what? Brother Luo, you also killed a few sword sons of the aristocratic families. Aren't his achievements greater than Dugu Wubai's? Meng Charan said disdainfully. You. Hearing Meng Charan's sarcastic words, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were fuming with anger. Indeed, Alliance Leader Yi, in terms of strength, Dugu Wubai is no match for Luo Yu now. In terms of achievements, Luo Yu has not only been lurking in the aristocratic family's camp for a long time, but he has also killed a few sword sons of the aristocratic families. Compared to Luo Yu's achievements, Dugu Wubai's achievement of killing Hua Wuxia is nothing, Meng Zhen said calmly. Upon hearing Meng Zhen's words, many voices of agreement rang out from the crowd. Yes, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, please reconsider. A few pseudo-saints also spoke up. They were all pseudo-saints who were on good terms with Meng Zhen. Yi Tianqing frowned tightly. Yi Guqin looked coldly at this group of people. In terms of strength, Yi Guqin would definitely transform into a spiritual abode. Dugu's clone alone would grow to a terrifying level in no time, and he would definitely be able to leave Luo Yu far behind. In terms of achievements, Yi Guqin had not only killed Hua Wuxia. Without him, Su Qingyu would not have appeared, let alone killed a pseudo-saint from an aristocratic family. Without his God-Devourer sword, Yi Tianqing would not have been able to kill Han Huiyan, let alone survive and obtain the sacred Dao fruit. Such a feat was enough to leave Luo Yu's meager achievements in the dust. However, these achievements could not be made public now. Yi Tianqing's eyes flashed, and then she said, "Enough, rules are rules, and in terms of achievements, Dugu Wubai's achievements are greater than anyone else's." "Oh, what achievements does he have?" Meng Zhen was so angry that he laughed. "It's not convenient to say for the time being, but what I can say is that the 4 sacred Dao fruits that our sword dynasty obtained were actually all thanks to Dugu Wubai," Yi Tianqing said. "Haha, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi is trying to push Dugu Wubai to the top. Who would believe such words?" Meng Zhen sneered. There was also a burst of discussion around the Sword Emperor Hall. Not many people believed Yi Tianqing's words. Seeing Yi Tianqing's resolute attitude, Meng Zhen had no more scruples and said directly, "I'll be frank. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, why don't you choose another candidate for Jiankui, or I'll withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance." As soon as his words fell, the noise came to an abrupt end. Everyone's eyes widened. Proposing to withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance at this time was definitely a threat. "Elder Meng, what do you mean?" Yi Tianqing's expression also froze. That's what I mean. What do you guys think?" Meng Zhen looked at the other 3 pseudo-saints. The 3 pseudo-saints were on good terms with Meng Zhen, and were considered to be in the same group. "We'll advance and retreat with Brother Meng," the 3 pseudo-saints said. His words caused an uproar. In other words, if Yi Tianqing insisted on letting Yi Guqin take the position of Jiankui, the 4 pseudo-saints, including Meng Zhen, would withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance. Now there were only a dozen pseudo-saints in the entire Sword Dao Alliance. It was conceivable that Meng Zhen's actions would have a huge impact. "Elder Meng, are you threatening us?" Yi Tianqing's expression had already turned cold. "It's not a threat. I'm thinking for the Sword Dynasty, so that the Sword Dynasty won't be ridiculed by the other dynasties," Meng Zhen said righteously. He made it sound good. But in fact, he was acting selfishly and wanted to push his disciple Luo Yu to take the position of Jiankui. Feeling the sudden tension in the atmosphere, the crowd also quieted down. No one thought that the position of Jiankui would cause such a situation. Elder Meng's words are not unreasonable. Besides, the Sword Dynasty can't lose 4 pseudo-saints. The other pseudo-saints transmitted their voices to Yi Tianqing. Only Qin Fuzi and Wu Hongyan had a sullen expression. Seeing this scene, the anger on Meng Charen's face dissipated, and was replaced by a wisp of calm pride. With Meng Zhen's support, Meng Charen naturally had confidence again. She looked at Yi Guchen and said in a strange voice, "Dugu Wu Bai, if you had abdicated yourself, you would have been able to gain a good reputation. You wouldn't have ended up like this. You wouldn't have been forcefully removed from the position of sword leader." In Meng Charen's opinion, choosing between 4 pseudo-saints and a cripple with a broken divine dwelling, as long as Yi Tianqing wasn't stupid, she would definitely choose to listen to Meng Zhen's opinion and remove Yi Guchen from the position of Jian Kuei. Not only her, but most of the people present also thought so. Now that the Sword Dynasty was in a precarious situation, and a great disaster was imminent, for pseudo-saints were absolutely indispensable. Yi Tianqing's expression didn't change much from beginning to end. He looked around and said calmly, "Don't worry. Since Elder Meng wants to leave the Sword Dao Alliance, then leave. I won't keep you." Chapter 11:11. Haha, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi is wise. Meng Zhen subconsciously smiled and cupped his hands at Yi Tianqing. A moment later, the smile on his face suddenly froze. He looked at Yi Tianqing in a daze, as if he thought he had heard wrongly. "Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, what did you say? Didn't you hear me clearly?" Yi Tianqing's tone also became cold. "Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, for that kid, you actually..." Elder Meng's old face suddenly became extremely gloomy. He was not the only one. Everyone present looked at Yi Tianqing with an extremely incredulous expression. Yi Tianqing was actually willing to give up Meng Zhen and the other 3 pseudo-saint experts for Yi Guchen. Meng Charen, who had a smug look on her face a moment ago, suddenly froze. At this moment, his entire face seemed to be frozen, which made him look rather comical. She also thought that she had heard wrongly. Meng Zhen's old face twitched slightly. He naturally did not really want to leave the Sword Dao Alliance. After all, if he left the alliance at this juncture, where would he put his face? He would probably be labeled as a coward and be criticized by all the people of the Sword Dynasty. Moreover, if he left the alliance, he would not even have a chance to get the fruit of the Sage Dao. However, since he had already said that he would lose face if he did not leave, it could be said that Yi Tianqing's decision immediately made Meng Zhen look like a pig in the mirror. Why did Deputy Alliance Leader Yi make such a decision? I don't know, but this time, the Sword Dao Alliance might lose 4 pseudo-saint experts. It's really one disaster after another. Many people present were sighing. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, are you really going to make such a choice? The 5 aristocratic families are about to take revenge. Can the Sword Dao Alliance bear such a loss? Meng Zhen said in a deep voice. This is not a reason for you to threaten me. This is my choice. Yi Tianqing flicked her sleeve and completely made up her mind. Meng Zhen's old face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Yi Guchen also sighed slightly. There were very few people who could make him admire, but Yi Tianqing was definitely one of them. In such a dangerous situation, Yi Tianqing still insisted on her principles. She did not hesitate to offend the 4 pseudo-saint experts to fulfill her promise and protect Yi Guchen's position. This kind of boldness and courage was not something that everyone possessed. Alright, since Vice Alliance Master Yi is so insistent, this old man won't be thick-skinned and stay any longer. I only hope that when the 5 great families come knocking on our door, Vice Alliance Master Yi won't come begging us again. Meng Zhen said furiously. He and his 3 friends left the alliance. That meant there were only 8 pseudo-saint level experts left in the Sword Dao Alliance. This number was absolutely inferior to the more than 20 false saints of the 5 aristocratic families. Yi Tianqing's alliance was Yi's alliance leaders. Before Yi Tianqing could say anything, Yi Guchen said coldly. Humph, ignorant child. Meng Zhen snorted coldly when he heard Yi Guchen's words. Yi Zhenyi said, Leader, is he? In their opinion, Yi Guchen did not understand the seriousness of the matter at all. However, they did not know that Yi Guchen still had a backup plan, which was Leng Qianhen. As long as Leng Qianhen could use the fruit of the sage Dao to become a heavenly tribulation saint, then, even if all the pseudo-saint level experts left, the Sword Dynasty would be able to survive, let alone Meng Zhen and the other three. The strength of a saint was far from what a pseudo-saint level expert could compare to. Of course, Yi Guchen did not say that he had the ability to invite Leng Qianhen, because this was a secret move. If it was leaked in advance, the 5 aristocratic families would definitely be vigilant. Yi Tianqing's firm attitude could not be changed. Meng Zhen could only lead the other 3 pseudo-saint level experts to leave the Sword Dao Alliance. However, he still did not leave and looked on coldly. Meng Charen's face was also very ugly. She did not expect Yi Tianqing to make such a choice. Charen, forget it. It's not like I have to get the position of Jian Kuei, Luo Yu said. He was indeed a little disappointed that he did not get the position of Jian Kuei. However, that was Yi Tianqing's decision, and Luo Yu could not say anything. He did have some objections to Yi Guchen taking the position of Jian Kuei, but he did not say it out loud. Brother Luo Yu, Charen really feels wronged for you. Meng Charen bit her lip. It was as if it was a great injustice that Luo Yu did not get the position of Jian Kuei. And Yi Guchen getting the position of Jian Kuei was not worthy of it. The position of the Sword Sun had been settled, and the next step was the conferring ceremony. As everyone knew, the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty had to wear masks to cover their faces and hide their names. They were referred to as Jian Shisan to the outside world. A group of etiquette officers took out 13 masks. 12 of them were silver in color. Only Jian Kuei's mask was dazzling gold. All the prodigies who received the title of Sword Sun stepped forward one by one and put on their masks. From the moment they put on their masks, they were given a new title. When it was Yi Guchen's turn, he looked at the golden mask but did not reach out his hand. Everyone was puzzled when they saw this. What's wrong? Why isn't Dugu Wubai wearing the Sword Sun mask? Could it be that he's scared and knows that he's not worthy of the position of Jian Kuei? When Meng Charen saw this, she snorted and said, "He's finally enlightened. Does he know that he's not worthy of the position?" Yi Tianqing also frowned slightly. She did not know why Yi Guchen did not take the Sword Sun mask. Yi Guchen's expression was normal. He flipped his hand and took out a ghost mask. The ghost mask was clumsy and looked like a child's toy. It looked like it was crying and laughing at the same time. Yi Guchen took the ghost mask and slowly put it on his face. Yi Guchen was dressed in a black robe. His black hair fluttered in the wind. He wore the ghost mask on his face. For a moment, a murderous aura spread out, causing everyone to shiver. That's Jian Shisan's mask. Jian Jinghong, Su Zihao, and the others sighed inwardly when they saw this. There was an uproar in the crowd. I, Dugu Wubai, will wear this ghost mask to witness the destruction of the Hua family. Yi Guchen's cold voice came from under the mask. He did not have a special relationship with Jian Shisan. However, Yi Guchen was slightly moved by Jian Shisan's protectiveness toward his sister. Therefore, he had already decided to wear the ghost mask and ascend to the position of Jian Kuei to witness the destruction of the Hua family. Yi Tianqing and the others did not say anything when they saw this. The Sword Master mask was just a symbol. Any mask was fine. After the 13 prodigies put on the masks, the entire Sword Master conferring ceremony came to an end. However, most of the prodigies present looked at Yi Guchen with twinkling eyes. Many people were actually not too willing for Yi Guchen to assume the position of Jian Kuei. Even among the 100 overlords, most of the overlords did not agree with Yi Tianqing's way of doing things. They felt that she was too impulsive. However, the outcome was already decided. They could not change it. Yi Tianqing frowned slightly when she saw the expressions on everyone's faces. At this moment, Yi Guchen, who was on the stage, suddenly spoke. Here, I have another thing to announce. Everyone looked at Yi Guchen. They did not know what medicine he was selling. Following that, Yi Guchen's light sentence set off stormy waves in everyone's hearts. They were tongue-tied. If there is a suitable opportunity, I will enter the skyless sword realm to explore. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.